Chapter 2205. Do you want to die? Lu Jun didn't answer, and Gu Yushu already humphed coldly, looking straight at Ling Han, exuding a sinister coldness. Lu Jun said, "Do you know who he is? Brother Gu is an A-grade student of the Saint Source Academy, a mighty monarch tier. Though he is also a heavenly soul like you, his strength is who knows how many times stronger than an emperor tier like you." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, "How do you know I'm an emperor tier? What if I'm also a monarch tier?" "What a joke!" Gu Yushu scoffed. "Monarch tiers definitely have the right to enter the academy, and emperor tiers only have the right to participate in the selection. You definitely didn't pass the selection and are reluctant to go, so you stay here. As a cultivator, you actually sell medicine for a living. How embarrassing." Ling Han laughed loudly. "If you have the ability, then don't eat medicinal pills." Gu Yushu didn't bother to pay attention. In his eyes, alchemists were only tools to serve cultivators. If he didn't need a large number of mystery-building pills to break through to the Immortal Palace tier, he wouldn't even take Lu Jun seriously. He couldn't afford a chef, so how could he not eat? "Now, I'm not only going to cripple one of your arms, but also slap your stinky mouth," Gu Yushu said darkly. Lu Jun instantly nodded repeatedly. He also hated Ling Han's mouth to the bone. "You two get lost for Niu." Niu bared her teeth, showing a fierce expression. Lu Jun and Gu Yushu's eyes swept over, and they both looked stunned. It wasn't that they hadn't seen Niu before, but the focus was on Ling Han, and they only skimmed the surface, not paying close attention. But it was different now. With Niu's snatching, they instantly saw clearly. This girl was so beautiful, so pure, like a clear spring, making people feel comfortable. "Get out of the way!" Gu Yushu shouted. Though it was a command, his tone wasn't very strict. Niu put her hands on her hips, and said, "Damn it! Niu is already full of anger today, and you guys still dare to vent it on Niu. Humph! You guys are finished. Niu is going to burst your chrysanthemums." When he heard these words, even Ling Han broke out in a cold sweat. A single wrong demonstration had completely led the little girl astray. Gu Yushu's face darkened with dissatisfaction. Niu had also cultivated the heaven-deceiving art, and there was a slight change in both her appearance and temperament. Though she was still very beautiful, she was like the Empress, and was much inferior compared to her previous absolute beauty. Thus, though Gu Yushu admired Niu's beauty, he had not reached the point of being infatuated. "Miss, you are making a mistake." Bam! Before he could finish his sentence, he saw a small, white and tender fist smashing towards him. Although this fist looked very delicate, Gu Yushu was immediately covered in cold sweat. He felt that if he was hit by this fist, he would definitely be severely injured. At that moment, he had no time to ponder why Niu was so powerful. He hurriedly raised his hands, and formed the shape of a cross in front of him. As his fist landed, a screen of light immediately formed in front of him. There was the roar of an azure dragon, the roar of a white tiger, the spread of a vermilion bird, and a black tortoise supporting the sky. Niu's fist was forcibly stopped, but the little girl did not retract her fist. Instead, she gave a humph and hung. Her little fist was immediately wrapped in a layer of flames. Source power of heaven and earth, purple flame heart fire. Cracks immediately appeared in the screen of light in front of Gu Yushu. Ka ka ka. The cracks grew larger and larger, and finally shattered with a loud bang. Niu's fist continued straight in, but Gu Yushu also obtained a chance to catch his breath. With a tap of his foot, he rapidly retreated. He couldn't help but be shocked. What he had just used was the Four Symbols art, which was created by an 8th heaven celestial king. He had also completely obtained the essence of this cultivation technique, but was limited by his cultivation level, so he could not activate its greatest might. But this should not be something that could be broken by an elite of the same cultivation level, especially when he had only taken one punch. That fire was too terrifying. Ah! He suddenly grabbed his head, feeling a terrifying intent attacking his spirit. Suddenly, blood flowed from all his orifices, and his appearance was too horrible to look at. Purple flame heart fire was not only terrifying in physical attacks, but also targeted one's spirit. How could Gu Yushu possibly have imagined that Niu had another source power of heaven and earth on her? That was something that even celestial kings would find extremely difficult to obtain. Peng Hunyu's battle awareness was incredibly strong, and she had already rushed forward long ago. Her fist swung repeatedly, and pung pung pung, she launched a series of fierce punches at Gu Yushu. At first, even if Gu Yushu was inferior to Ling Han, the difference would not be so great. But who asked him to be careless? At their level, one mistake, and the whole game would be lost. Gu Yushu could only continuously parry, but Hunyu's physical strength was also incredibly terrifying. Though she was inferior to Ling Han, she had long since advanced into the Immortal Palace tier, and this caused the speed of her punches to far surpass Gu Yushu's. Pung pung pung. Hunyu's punches rained down like rain, and Gu Yushu could only continuously retreat. As he retreated, he would naturally bump into tables, chairs, and walls. Without a doubt, whatever he bumped into would immediately shatter. Meanwhile, Ling Han smiled as he counted. 1 million star stones, 2 million star stones. Every time he reported a number, he would glance at Lu Jun, causing Lu Jun to involuntarily want to stomp his feet in anger. He wasn't the one who had broken them, so what did it have to do with him? Moreover, there were many things that were broken by Hunyu, so why was she counted as well? After complaining, Lu Jun's heart thumped wildly. By the looks of it, it was very likely that Gu Yushu was no match for that beauty. How was that possible? Gu Yushu was a mighty monarch tier, and Hunyu wasn't from the Immortal Palace tier. So why could she beat Gu Yushu to the point where he couldn't even fight back? This meant that Hunyu was also a monarch tier. But why hadn't a monarch tier entered the Saint Source Academy? It had already been 30 years. Would Gu Yushu lose? This thought rose in his mind. At first, he wouldn't have the slightest bit of doubt about Gu Yushu's strength. There was no one in the Heaven Soul tier that could suppress Gu Yushu, and at most, their strength would be on par with his. But now Lu Jun was filled with worry. He was worried for Gu Yushu, and also worried for his wallet. Just now, when Ling Han reported a number, he only glanced at him. It was clear that he wanted to make a fool out of him. Gu Yushu, you must fight back bravely. Unfortunately, things didn't go as he wished. Gu Yushu didn't find a point to fight back, and was instead suppressed more and more miserably by Hunyu. Not only was Hunyu astonishingly talented in martial art, her battle awareness was also extraordinarily strong. In a situation where their battle prowess was about the same, as long as she seized the opportunity, even Ling Han couldn't possibly turn the tables. How could Gu Yushu do it? Because Hunyu had already closed in on him. He did not even have the time to draw out pseudo-celestial tools, decrees, or other treasures. He could only continuously deal with Hunyu's fists that were like a storm. Otherwise, if he was hit even once, even if he drew out his decrees and pseudo-celestial tools, he might have already fainted. He could only protect his vitals, because his attack speed was completely unable to keep up with Hunyu's. He could only give up on his arms, legs, and feet. If he was going to take a beating, then so be it. As he fought, he retreated at the same time. Because he was completely suppressed by Hunyu, it was impossible for him to turn the situation around with his own strength. So what else could he do but retreat? Bang bang bung. As he retreated, he quickly created a big hole in the wall of the medicine shop. This one costs 20 million star stones, Ling Han said to Lu Jun. What does that have to do with me? Lu Jun wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He really had no money left. Chapter 2 delivered. Continue coding. Chapter 2206. Peng, Gu Yushu was still retreating, and crashed into another wall. Another 20 million, Ling Han said, counting. Lu Jun couldn't hold it in anymore. He jumped up and said, "This isn't your shop at all." Yes, Gu Yushu had already retreated from the medicine shop. The wall he crashed into was the wall of another shop, and had nothing to do with the Rain Emperor Pavilion. Ling Han glared at him. "You're really a busybody. Can't I collect on your behalf?" Collect on his behalf? Lu Jun shuddered. When he reached the back of Gu Yushu's house, it was filled with houses. If Ling Han collected everything on his behalf, would he be able to pay it off even if he sold the rest of his life? Gu Yushu, fight back with all your might, I beg you. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't hear his plea, and neither did Gu Yushu. He continued to crash into wall after wall, making Ling Han report a number, that made one's heart beat faster. Lu Jun felt like he was about to faint. Though he was also someone who had seen much of the world, the thought of the debt that he might have to bear made his face green. However, his worries were soon over. It wasn't that Gu Yushu fought back with all his might and had a chance of winning, but he was ultimately defeated by Hunyeo. He was pressed onto the ground and pummeled fiercely, so he naturally couldn't break any walls or chairs anymore. 980 million star stones, thank you for your patronage. Ling Han smiled at Lu Jun. Lu Jun felt his vision darken, and he really fainted. First he was anxious and second he was angry. How could this be, breaking a few walls and tearing down a few tables? And he had to pay so much money. Exploding chrysanthemum. Hunyeo carried Gu Yushu's neck back in high spirits. When she arrived at the entrance of the medicine shop, she swung her hand, and Gu Yushu sprawled on the ground. What a coincidence, his buttocks were raised high. The little girl drew out a metal rod, her face filled with anticipation. Stop, stop, stop. Ling Han hurriedly stretched out a hand to stop her. Playing was fine, scaring people was fine, but she couldn't be serious. No, Hunyeo wants to play. Hunyeo pouted. It's not fun, Ling Han advised. Fun, Hunyeo said coquettishly. Ling Han directly stuffed a drumstick into Hunyeo's mouth. Eat the meat obediently. Hunyeo was still grumbling. She really wanted to spit out this chicken drumstick to express the displeasure in her heart. Unexpectedly, this drumstick was so delicious that she couldn't bear to spit it out. She could only gnaw on it to vent her anger. While eating, she glanced at Gu Yushu's buttocks with a pitiful gaze. She had never forgotten the idea of bursting his chrysanthemum. Gu Yushu was seriously injured, and already somewhat delirious. Gu Yushu still felt a chill in his heart. Martial artists had an instinctive sense of danger, especially a martial emperor like him. Ling Han grabbed both Gu Yushu and Lu Jun and stuffed them into the chairs. Then his origin energy shook lightly, and both of them instantly woke up slowly. The first thing that entered his eyes was naturally Ling Han's smiling face that was filled with harmlessness. However, Lu Jun was extremely clear about how ruthless the heart behind this face was. Then he saw Hunyeo gnawing on the drumstick. One moment, she revealed an expression of enjoyment, and the next moment, she looked fierce, making both of them feel uneasy. They finally realized that this girl wasn't a reasonable person at all. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Come, let's discuss the issue of compensation." "I have no money." Lu Jun was very straightforward. "You know, I'm not lying." Previously, he had emptied out all his belongings. Ling Han then said to Gu Yushu, "I don't care who pays the bill. Anyways, just pay up." "How much do you want?" "I'll pay," Gu Yushu said proudly, and even cast a disdainful look at Lu Jun. What kind of alchemist was he? He couldn't even afford to break a few walls and chairs. Lu Jun shook his head internally thinking, "Bro, you're going to cry later. That master rips people off without batting an eye. Straightforward." Ling Han patted Gu Yushu's shoulder. "I just like straightforward people like you." Gu Yushu actually felt a little smug, but immediately spat inwardly. "Fine, then 980 million star stones. Since you're so straightforward, I'll round it up for you. Let's make it 1 billion, Ling Han said. Gu Yushu instantly gaped and looked at Ling Han with an incredulous gaze. He felt that this person had gone mad, or was his brain fried? He actually dared to make such a request. Wasn't it just a matter of a few chairs and a few walls? 1 star stone was completely enough. Ling Han was displeased and said, "That look in your eyes, that expression. What do you mean? You don't want to pay up? Just now, you even patted your chest and said you were very straightforward. So why are you stingy now?" Gu Yushu shuddered and then said, "Even so, it's not as exaggerated as 1 billion. Moreover, other people would lower the price to round it up. And who would raise the price like you? You're saying that I cheated you?" Ling Han looked at Lu Jun and said with a smile, "Come tell me, am I a person who cheats neither the old nor the young, and is fair and just to the point of angering the heavens and the people?" Lu Jun was also not in the mood to ridicule Ling Han's inappropriate choice of words. Being stared at by Ling Han's smiling but murderous gaze, how would he dare to say anything unfavorable to Ling Han? "Young Master Han is the most fair and just," he hurriedly said. "You." Ling Han clapped his hands and looked as if he had expected it. Gu Yushu really wanted to kick Lu Jun to the ground. What are you afraid of? This is Formagua City, and they are disciples of Saint Source Academy. What would Ling Han dare to do to them? Although not all 22 Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings were stationed here, as long as one or two of them were here, their divine wills could reach everywhere, and there was nothing they couldn't reach. How could they let them be killed? Of course, Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings wouldn't care about such a small matter. And this was also the reason why Ling Han dared to openly extort them. Who asked them to provoke him first? No matter how much they slandered him, he was still in the right. It's too much, Gu Yushu said with his head lowered. Although Ling Han was too black-hearted, he couldn't actually take out so much money, so he felt a little embarrassed. Ah, you're so poor. Ling Han looked as if he hated that Gu Yushu didn't want to fight for it. What kind of emperor are you? Gu Yushu felt very wronged. If the resources spent on him were converted into star stones, let alone 1 billion, it would be more than 10 billion. But how could the money spent on him be compared to the money he had? Even for an emperor like him, it was already very good to have 100 million star stones on him. 1 billion was really too much. Give me some time, I will definitely gather it. He gritted his teeth, feeling that he couldn't afford to lose face. He would rather spend 1 billion star stones on Ling Han first, then hire someone to deal with Ling Han and collect the star stones. How can you do that? What if you go back on your word? Ling Han shook his head. I definitely won't. Gu Yushu promised again and again. Stop talking nonsense, hand over the money on you first. Ling Han drew out an iron rod and said, if you continue to be so long-winded, I'll burst your chrysanthemums. Hunyo instantly pouted. He still said that bursting chrysanthemums wasn't fun? It was obviously she who wanted to play, but he still didn't let her play. Lu Jun and Gu Yushu were so scared that their faces turned green. If their chrysanthemums were to be burst in public, would they still have the face to live in the future? I'll pay. The two of them hurriedly called out. Chapter 3, Crying the code is so slow. Today is 5 p.m. Tomorrow is also 5 p.m. Next week we'll strive for 6 p.m. weekend. Chapter 2208. This was the first time the 9 emperors had fled before the battle had even begun. But they ran resolutely, without the slightest bit of hesitation. What a joke. He had beaten Gu Yushu into a retard with one punch. What kind of concept was that? Ling Han was definitely a super monster like Ji Wuming and Shi Chanzi. Not to mention the fact that there were only 9 of them. Even if 90 of them joined hands, they would still be suppressed, unless they could step into the immortal palace. Right now they were being suppressed too much. Ling Han chuckled and spread out his palm. Instantly, rays of sword light shot out, enveloping the surrounding area of over 100 li, transforming into something like a heavenly pillar. The 9 emperors stopped and didn't dare to take another step forward. They had a feeling that if they were to forcefully pass through the heavenly pillar, they would be met with a head-on attack, and the result would definitely be that they would be blasted into dregs. This was far too frightening. This kind of elite was far too frightening. He was definitely comparable to an immortal palace tier elite. Although monarchs were prideful, they accepted reality much faster than ordinary people. Very soon, they turned around and walked towards the Rain Emperor Pavilion. Sir, what do you want? Asked one of the emperors. Ling Han smiled and said, didn't you hear what I just said? Fine, I'll say it again. I'm lacking a few lackeys, and you guys are more suitable. I plan to give you guys a chance. The 9 emperors revealed expressions of rage. They were emperors, people destined to become immortal kings. How could they be the lackeys of others? Sir, we were just bewitched by someone, and we didn't even attack. There's no need to be so overbearing, said a sovereign. This was Saint Source Academy. Who dared to act recklessly here? Ling Han chuckled. If I wasn't strong enough, would you still say such words? Since you've come, it means that you have the intention to deal with me, and you've put it into action. I can't tolerate this. Sir, a man can be killed but not humiliated. Do you want us to fight to the death? A great emperor threatened. Whoosh, Ling Han attacked. His palm transformed into a small mountain that smashed down towards that emperor. There was no suspense at all. So what if he was a monarch? before the battle prowess equivalent to the peak of the fourth secret. He was like a defenseless little rabbit. Pung! That person was instantly suppressed, and his limbs were spread open. Ling Han smiled at everyone and asked, "Is there anyone else who is unconvinced?" The remaining 8 emperors exchanged glances. All of them were furious, but they didn't dare speak a word. Moreover, they were filled with a grievance. They had always been the ones looking down on everyone else, but now, they were the ones standing on the ground, looking up at a supreme god. This made them feel very uncomfortable. "Small tree, come. Have those companions of yours come and sign a contract of servitude. Just like you, they will all be slaves for 10,000 years. Ling Han gestured at Gu Yushu, and the latter finally stood up. Of course, Ling Han had been merciful. If not, the immortal mansion would have been able to kill heavenly souls easily. However, the immortal king's divine will was omnipresent in Formy Water City, so it was impossible to kill someone right under the nose of the immortal king. Thus, Ling Han had never planned to kill anyone. He just wanted to extort money and recruit subordinates. Gu Yushu's expression was extremely ugly. He had brought people here to take revenge, but in the end? But what could they do no matter how indignant they were? Up until now, no immortal king had spoken, which meant that the immortal king could not be bothered with the small squabbles of juniors like them. As long as Ling Han did not kill them or cripple their cultivation, the immortal king would probably pretend that he had not arrived and let them develop. He took out a few beast skins. These were the skins of immortal beasts. Not only were they extremely tough, but they could also be preserved for countless years. They were perfect as carriers for contracts. Due to Ling Han's tyrannical power, the 9 emperors could only sign their contracts one by one. If they did not sign, they would definitely not be able to pass the test. They would sign. In any case, as long as they could get their contracts back, they would not suffer any losses. Ling Han was very satisfied and put away the 9 contracts. If you are dissatisfied, feel free to find others to challenge me. I do not mind recruiting a few more subordinates. The 10 emperors were all so ashamed that they wanted to die. They all turned around and fled. As for how Gu Yushu would be blamed by the others, this was not within the scope of Ling Han's consideration. Meanwhile, Lu Jun did not leave. He had been captured by Ling Han to be concocted into alchemical pills. In the short term, there should not be anyone coming to make trouble for Ling Han. He renovated the alchemical pill shop, and then grabbed Lu Jun into the Black Tower. The two of them concocted alchemical pills together. If one wanted to open a medicine shop, they naturally could not lack alchemical pills, especially high-level alchemical pills. When Lu Jun entered into the Black Tower, he had been knocked unconscious. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was already in the Black Tower. There was no time for him to think too much. After being kicked by Ling Han, he obediently began to concoct alchemical pills. Thousands of years had passed in the Black Tower, and Ling Han had enough alchemical pills in his hands. Added with the ones that Lu Jun had concocted, Ling Han felt that it was enough for the alchemical pill shop to operate for some time. He exited the Black Tower. As for Lu Jun, he continued to concoct alchemical pills in the Black Tower. He did not know the speed of time in the Black Tower, and only thought that it would be accelerated by 100 times at most. In that case, he would be able to make it out after struggling for 1,000,000 years. "Ling Han, when are we going to the Saint Source Academy?" Hunyao asked coquettishly. These few days, she had been learning how to charm men from bewitching Maiden Row, so the tone of her voice was also very strange. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Niao, this style is not suitable for you, so don't learn it." "Why?" Hunyao asked coquettishly, and even sent a flirtatious look at Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh even louder, directly clutching his stomach. "It's not fun." Hunyao pouted. Bewitching Maiden Row lied, and even said that this would definitely seduce you. Yet you keep laughing. "Humph, what are you laughing at? What's so funny?" Ling Han patted Hunyao's small face. "Little girl, I already told you this is not your style." Hunyao was displeased. Why couldn't she seduce this guy, Ling Han? Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "When second brother comes out of seclusion, we'll go to the Saint Source Academy together." "All right." Hunyao nodded. They waited patiently, and Ling Han continued to concoct alchemical pills. One could never have too many alchemical pills. After a year had passed in the real world, the Rain Emperor finally came out of seclusion. He had formed 9 parts of his soul, and his strength had achieved a breakthrough. In the Heaven Soul tier, he was practically invincible. Since the Rain Emperor had broken through, Ling Han and the others immediately set off for the Saint Source Academy, especially Ling Han and the Rain Emperor. They were both excited to meet the true top-notch geniuses, such as Ji Wu Ming and Shi Zi. They were not far from the Saint Source Academy, and in about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, they had already arrived outside the academy. If it were not so close, Lu Jun would not have gone to the Rain Emperor Pavilion previously. It was precisely because that town was the closest to the academy that the flow of visitors was naturally the highest. The Saint Source Academy was very large, and it was very spectacular. From the outside, one could see tall mountains that pierced the clouds, each with its own unique characteristics. There was a blazing mountain of flames, a mountain of water that was covered in ice and snow, and a mountain of lightning that was intertwined with lightning. There were a total of 7 such mountains, respectively representing the 5 elements, lightning and poison. However, there were no mountains of space, time, or slaughter, because even a celestial king could not move such a mountain range. There was no such place in the world. How to enter? Chapter 2209. The Saint Source Academy was founded by 22 celestial kings in the 9th heaven, so its status was naturally astonishingly high, even more so than the strongest sects in the world. It was difficult to enter the gates of the academy. Who didn't want to enter the Saint Source Academy? But the threshold was too high. Ling Han, the Rain Emperor, Wuxia, and the Empress stood side by side at the gates of the academy. There were only 4 of them, but they were like 4 emperors, able to stir up a boundless storm. However, Wuxia was too unreliable. She had already taken out a chicken drumstick and started gnawing on it, instantly destroying the image, and completely turning into a comedy star. Who are these 4 idiots? Do they think they can be regarded as disciples of the academy, just by standing at the gates of the academy? Haha, where did these 4 idiots come from? There were students coming in and out, and when they saw Ling Han and the others, they instantly burst into discussion, thinking that these 4 were really too funny. A man approached and asked the Empress and Wuxia, "2 beauties become my followers, and I will take you in. How about it?" Wuxia threatened the man as she gnawed on a chicken drumstick. "Get lost, or Neo will beat you up. Oh, our public lover has suffered a setback." Another man walked over. This was a man in green robes. He was tall and slender, and had a majestic aura. The first man turned to look at the green-robed man, frowned, and said, "Jia Shi, you don't have to be nosy. Did I say anything wrong, Cheng Liang?" The green-robed man Jia Shi asked calmly. The first man was called Cheng Liang, a famous playboy, and he was indeed very skilled in dealing with women. Many women with higher cultivation and stronger abilities than him had willingly become his lovers. When he saw the Empress and Wuxia, he immediately approached them. Being rejected by Wuxia was naturally within his expectations. His charm was great, but it had not reached the level where he could make people fall in love at first sight. However, this time, he would hit on them and become familiar with them, and then he would shamelessly pursue them, slowly displaying his charm and completely capturing the hearts of these 2 beauties. As for Jia Shi, he was also a playboy, so when he came out like this, he knew that he wanted to ruin his stage, and his target was also these 2 exquisite beauties. "Jia Shi, you want to be my enemy?" he said darkly. Jia Shi snickered coldly. He was indeed no match for Cheng Liang, but now they were fighting over women, and it was a competition of tactics, not martial strength. He said, "What? I hit the nail on the head, and you are angry from embarrassment." He said, "What? I hit, and you's embarrassment has turned into anger." Ling Han stretched out his leg and gave a light hook. Pung! Cheng Liang's whole body fell onto the ground, landing solidly on the ground. Seeing this, Jia Shi could not help but laugh out loud. But as he laughed and laughed, the smile on his face disappeared. To be able to enter the Saint Source Academy, which one of them was mediocre? He and Cheng Liang were both emperor tiers, and among emperor tiers, they could be considered to have superior aptitude. But Cheng Liang was seduced by Ling Han with a single move. What kind of suppression of strength was this? If he had revealed the slightest bit of his desire for the two girls just now, wouldn't he also be dealt a blow? Cheng Liang's head was spinning from the fall, and it was a long while before he managed to crawl to his feet. He looked at Ling Han, and at first, there was a blank expression on his face. Then, a furious expression appeared on his face, and he said, You dare to attack me? He is a disciple of Saint Source Academy. You're just relying on your higher cultivation level. His face was full of disdain. He had sensed that Ling Han was a heavenly soul when he attacked, and he was only a ghost. Although he was a king, he was at most invincible among earth souls. He could withstand a few blows from a heavenly soul, but he was definitely no match for him. He was really shameless. His cultivation level was higher than his, but he still wanted to launch a sneak attack. What was this? The surrounding students nodded. With their eyesight, they could see that Ling Han was indeed a heavenly soul. Ling Han sneered and said, You're plotting against my wife, and you're blaming my cultivation level for being too high. Pfft. Instantly many people laughed. Cheng Liang had indeed taken the initiative to ask for a beating. To make an inappropriate analogy, if someone wanted to molest your wife, would you first check if the other party's strength was on the same level as yours before you attacked? How could that be possible? Cheng Liang was momentarily speechless. He pointed at Ling Han and said, Fine, don't run if you have the guts. He turned around and ran into the academy. As a member of the academy, he was naturally not stopped, and he quickly disappeared. There were no guards at the entrance, but there were celestial king-level formations circulating, which were more effective than any guards. Bro, you should hurry up and leave, someone called out to Ling Han. Why? Ling Han asked with a smile. Although Cheng Liang's strength is not as good as yours, his brother is also a king and a heavenly soul, that person said. You can't enter the academy, which means that you're at most a heavenly soul king, and you're one of the weaker ones. It's impossible for you to be Cheng Qi's match. Cheng Qi was Cheng Liang's brother. He had two kings, and was very extraordinary. Being able to enter Saint Source Academy had now become the standard to determine whether a person was a genius or not. Bro, don't be afraid. It's just Cheng Qi, right? Just one word, do it. Someone deliberately egged him on. There were still many people like this, all of them hooting and cheering for Ling Han. Ling Han naturally would not leave. He only smiled. Entering Saint Source Academy was actually very simple. He only had to prove that he had powerful talent in martial art, or that he was skilled in a particular skill. Thus, Ling Han and the others only had to fight here until everyone was speechless, and they would naturally be able to become a part of the academy. Fighting, this was the method that he preferred. After a while, Jiao Liang appeared again, and there was a short man beside him. However, his aura was astonishing, as if there was a giant dragon hibernating in his body. This short man was Cheng Qi. The difference in appearance between these two brothers was really big. Cheng Qi and his brother walked out of the main doors, and both stopped in front of Ling Han. You dare to make a move against my younger brother? You're really quite bold, Cheng Qi said coldly. His gaze did not linger on the Empress and Hunyo at all, but was instead fixed on Ling Han and the Rain Emperor. Come, not only was there a huge difference in appearance between these two brothers, there was also a huge difference in their personalities. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, "Esso's second in the world, I guess. What I hate the most is when others talk glibly in front of me." Cheng Qi's expression was still icy cold. You don't know how to smile?" Hunyo asked curiously. Cheng Qi instantly looked angry. "I said it before. What I hate the most is when others talk glibly in front of me. You really don't know how to smile." Hunyo was a curious baby, and could not help but ask again. Talkative, Cheng Qi could not hold back anymore, and stretched out his right hand, which turned into a golden millstone, pressing down on Hunyo. Hunyo's interest was piqued. She pouted, and Hu blew out a breath of air. Instantly, the golden millstone flew backwards towards the sky, and instantly disappeared without a trace. She was a curious baby, and moved closer to ask, "Have you never smiled before?" Chengqi did not panic. He spread out his hands, and Hong, a golden light spread out, assimilating everything in the surroundings into metal. Why aren't you smiling? Hunyo widened her eyes, completely fine. She still did not save the manuscript, and continued to write chapter after chapter. Chapter 2210. Chengqi instantly felt a chill rise from the bottom of his heart, and spread to his limbs. Hunyo blew his attack away with a breath. Though he was a little surprised, he didn't take it too seriously, because that was only a casual attack of his. But the attack just now was his full power. She didn't use any celestial technique at all, and just swept in front of him, her face full of curiosity. How could this not be scary? Not just him, everyone at the door was stunned. Was this girl pretending to be weak to eat a tiger? Hunyo didn't take it to heart at all. Her face was full of curiosity. Do you really not know how to smile? Wouldn't that be too hard to play? Smile your head. Chengqi roared angrily, and suddenly swung his palm at Hunyo. Pa! Hunyo reached out and grabbed Chengqi's wrist, and said in displeasure. Nyo is asking you a question. What's with your attitude? Are you dissatisfied with Nyo? If you're dissatisfied, then say it. If you don't say it, how will Nyo know? Don't think you're great just because you put on a sour face. Nyo can too. As expected, she straightened her face and confronted Chengqi. This little girl had never lost in her life, and was very interested in new things, a bit like Xiaogu. Chengqi wanted to cry but had no tears. His reaction was very normal, all right? However, this outrageously beautiful woman in front of him was obviously an unreasonable person. And with so many people watching, did he have the nerve to beg for mercy? I'm warning you, this is the Saint Source Academy, he said loudly, subduing in disguise. Of course Nyo knows where this is. Why do you still tell Nyo? Hunyo tilted her head and thought for a moment, and couldn't help but be furious. You mean Nyo is very stupid, not even knowing where this is? Chengqi couldn't help but be dumbfounded. These words could be understood like this? What kind of brain did you have? Pung, ouch! Before he could finish his thought, he had already suffered a punch to his face. It was so painful that tears flowed out of his eyes. Pung! The black fist came flying over again. This time, he directly became dizzy and disoriented, and his mind became unclear. Hunyo grabbed the clothes on Chengqi's chest as if dragging a dead dog, then swept a glance at the people around and asked fiercely, Do you guys think Nyo is stupid? Oh, everyone couldn't help but shake their heads. This girl was like a fiend right now. It was best not to anger her. That's right, Nyo is smart. Hunyo was instantly all smiles. She was easily angered, and also easily happy. Pa! She casually threw Chengqi away. You don't even know how to smile. It's not fun at all. Brother. Cheng Liang hurriedly ran over, and helped his elder brother up. Fortunately, Hunyo only punched him twice, temporarily knocking Chengqi out, but did not injure his core. Thus, after being shaken by Cheng Liang a few times, Chengqi slowly woke up. I know how to smile. Chengqi smiled foolishly, his head spinning slightly. Fine, he had been beaten silly, and his brain hadn't recovered yet. He's so ugly, no wonder you didn't smile all this while. Hunyo shivered, her face filled with disgust. Brother, wake up. Cheng Liang shook Chengqi's shoulder desperately. After a few moments, Chengqi's eyes finally cleared up. He was first furious, then terrified, and finally his face flushed red. Making a fool out of himself in front of the academy would probably follow him for the rest of his life. This feud was too big. Without another word, he directly ran towards the academy gates. Brother! Cheng Liang hurriedly chased after him. When he was about to enter, he even turned around and said to Ling Han and the others, If you have the guts, you guys wait here. Seeing Hunyo raise her small fist, he hurriedly ran away happily. Ling Han simply took out a table and chairs, and then brewed tea. They felt that Ling Han was really audacious to be so impudent in front of Huang Yishan. Huang Yishan, on the other hand, revealed an embarrassed and angry expression. He really planned to make Ling Han kneel down and apologize, but the other party basically wouldn't agree. Then, he would attack and beat the other party to the ground, perfectly resolving the matter. However, Ling Han didn't play by the rules and spoke before him. Even if he beat Ling Han to the ground, he wouldn't be able to show his face. You have a sharp tongue, Huang Yishan said coldly. Brother Huang. Gu Yishu spoke up. Peace is the most important thing in all things. Why don't we just forget about it? To value peace, Huang Yishan almost spurted out. Who doesn't know that you, Gu Yishu, are the most proud and arrogant? When others see that you don't pay enough respect to them, you will be unable to restrain your anger and insist on beating them to the ground. And now you're telling me to make peace? Are you crazy? He sneered 3 times. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a good relationship with Gu Yushu, he really wanted to give him 2 tight slaps. Fuck, my little brother was beaten, and you're telling me to value peace? Where should I put my face? Chapter 22:12. The identities of Ling Han's group aroused everyone's curiosity and made even more monarchs step out, wanting to force out the trump cards of Ling Han's group. However, there was also an endless stream of monarchs that stood out for Ling Han. Coincidentally, he had just subdued 10 monarchs a few days ago. When all 10 of them made a move, Ling Han couldn't help but smile. He had new helpers. Yan Xianlu, Cheng Zixin, and the others were all allied monarchs. There was no need for Ling Han to speak. These people took the initiative to make a move, expanding Ling Han's reputation. At first, the spectators at the entrance were only curious, but as time went on, they became shocked. So many monarchs had made a move just for Ling Han's group of 4? If Ling Han's group of 4 could use this power, how terrifying would that be? They could instantly become the 5th extreme of the academy, and would not be inferior to the forces established by Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, and the others. What was more exaggerated was that this still wasn't the true strength of Ling Han's group. No one knew how many monarchs they still had under their command. However, as more and more monarchs became interested, the cards that belonged to Ling Han's group were finally played. When the 37th monarch appeared, there were no more new monarchs to block for Ling Han's group of 4. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. There were only 36 monarchs under Ling Han's group of 4. But when they thought about it again, they were astounded. 36 monarchs, what kind of concept was that? As long as these people didn't die, they could all become celestial kings in the future. Moreover, the lowest achievement would be 4th heaven, or even 5th heaven. How terrifying a force was this? In the skies, 36 groups were fighting fiercely. There were as many as 72 monarchs fighting. This kind of scene was definitely rare. Han Lin, right? The 37th monarch looked at Ling Han. After so long, with the methods of monarchs, they had naturally clearly investigated the background of Ling Han's group of 4. Of course, this was only what Ling Han wanted them to know. Can we have a spar? He didn't dare to go overboard. Even though only one of Ling Han's group of 4 had fought, who would dare to underestimate them when they were able to mobilize 36 emperors? The empress leaped out and didn't reply. She merely crooked her finger at that person, displaying her haughtiness. That monarch couldn't help but feel angry. She was beautiful, but this was the world of martial artists. Beauty was only a spoil of war for experts. He humphed and immediately charged toward the empress. The empress was incredibly domineering. Her personality was like this, and her attacks were also like this. Boom! A great battle erupted. The 2 of them did not fight in the skies, but rather fought on the ground. Because the empress was not in the skies, it was naturally impossible for her to go up and perform a one-man show by herself. Everyone quickly revealed a shocked expression. It wasn't like the battle in the sky. Even though there was a slight difference in strength between the 72 emperors, it was absolutely not something that could be decided in a short period of time. However, the moment the empress made her move, she was domineering and domineering. In just a dozen or so moves, she had completely gained the upper hand. After over 100 moves, she had established a huge advantage, and victory was right in front of her eyes. This was really frightening. They were both monarch tiers, so why was the gap between them so huge? It should be known that the term monarch tier meant the strongest among those at the same cultivation level. Since they were already the strongest, their strength should be incredibly close. So how could there be such an obvious gap? After another 100 moves, the empress pushed out with her palm. Pung! That monarch tier was sent flying. He lay flat on the ground, unable to catch his breath for a long time. All of a sudden, the whole place was silent. Though they had long since expected that the Empress would win, when they actually saw this scene, they were still so shocked that their scalps went numb. A monarch tier had been defeated just like that. Who else could defeat Ling Han and the others? Could it be that there weren't many who could fight in the vast Saint Source Academy? Were they going to let these 4 people block the entrance and continue acting arrogantly? Ask the Immortal Palace tier to come out, someone suggested. Immortal Palace tier, Ling Han, and the others were only heavenly souls. If they asked the Immortal Palace tier to come out, wouldn't that be bullying the weak? But even Heavenly Soul Monarch tiers had been defeated so easily. Aside from the Immortal Palace tier, who else could suppress these 4 people? It's a pity that Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, Desolation, and Jia Lan have all broken through to the Immortal Palace tier. Otherwise, they would be the strongest heavenly souls, someone said regretfully. That's right. This won everyone's agreement. Ji Wuming and the others were really too strong, suppressing all the other monarch tiers to the point that they were dim and dull. If there was a tier above monarch tier, then these 4 would definitely be at this tier, and no one could compare to them. I heard that a few troublesome figures have come. A young man appeared. He was dressed in a snow-white robe, and appeared incredibly elegant. Senior Brother Ji. When they saw this person, the people in the surroundings all bowed respectfully. Ji Yutong, a disciple of the academy, and a secret monarch. Though the true starting point of the competition between monarch tiers was the Celestial King tier. Martial art was also realistic. Right now, he was a secret monarch, which meant that he was stronger than heavenly souls. Furthermore, he was not just a little stronger, but completely suppressed. Thus, they had to maintain the necessary respect. Ji Yutong walked towards Ling Han and the others. As he walked, he released his own aura. Boom! The secret power of the Immortal Palace circulated, shaking the heavens. In the sky, the 36 battles all stopped, and the 72 monarch tiers all landed, looking at Ji Yutong with reverence in their eyes. Though they were only 1 step behind Ji Yutong, this 1 step caused a huge gap between their abilities to appear. This was a gap that no talent could make up for. Without entering the Immortal Palace, no matter how strong a heavenly soul was, it was only a dividing soul. Hong Long Long. The earth shook continuously as if it could not bear Ji Yutong's domineering aura. The Rain Emperor's eyes lit up, and he stood up. 4th brother, leave this opponent to me. All right. Ling Han nodded. He knew that the Rain Emperor had just formed 9 dividing souls, and wanted to test his abilities. A mere dividing soul dares to make an enemy of me? Ji Yutong said disdainfully. What did a secret monarch mean? His battle prowess could be said to be invincible among the 3 secrets? Generally speaking, if 10 heavenly soul monarchs joined forces, they could match a secret monarch, but that was only an ordinary secret monarch. Against a secret monarch, they could only kneel. And the Rain Emperor was only 1 person. He could not even defeat an ordinary secret monarch, and he still wanted to exchange blows with him? What a joke. The Rain Emperor stared at Ji Yutong for a while, and then said, Attack with your full strength, or I will kill you. Ji Yutong almost exploded in anger. A mere dividing soul actually dared to ask him to attack with his full strength. He could not help but laugh in extreme anger. Fine, then I will fulfill your wish. In any case, this person was not a disciple of the academy, so there was no harm in killing him. The Rain Emperor attacked. Xiao, his figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Ji Yutong. He punched out and boom! It was like a falling star, unparalleled and domineering. Ji Yutong could not help but be shocked, and hurriedly moved to parry the attack. Pung! He retreated continuously, feeling the bones all over his body tremble, and it was extremely uncomfortable. On the other hand, though the Rain Emperor also retreated a few steps, the distance he retreated was obviously smaller than Ji Yutong's. This could not be more obvious. Ji Yutong was inferior to the Rain Emperor. Everyone was dumbfounded. A mere heavenly soul actually gained the upper hand in a clash with a secret monarch. Who could believe it? Hiss! This was a monster that could stand on the same level as Ji Wuming, the Primordial Era, and other supreme monarchs. Yet Ling Han shook his head slightly. Though the Rain Emperor's luck was heaven-defying, and he had refined the remains of a ninth heaven celestial king, this obviously could not compare to the direct reincarnation of Ji Wuming, a ninth heaven celestial king. If this was all the Rain Emperor had, then in a battle of equals, the Rain Emperor definitely could not be a match for Ji Wuming. Chapter 22:13. However, even so, it was a piece of cake for the Rain Emperor to suppress Ji Yutong. Perhaps the Rain Emperor had some heaven-defying good fortune that could raise his battle prowess to another level and truly rank among the top. The Rain Emperor punched continuously. He had long walked his own path, but at that time his cultivation level was too low, far from reaching the height of regulations. But now it was different. He had integrated regulations, and the Rain Emperor's path had truly become clear. Under everyone's gaze, the Rain Emperor completely gained the upper hand. Each punch was fiercer than the last, suppressing Ji Yutong until he had no temper. Ji Yutong was ashamed and angry at first. He, a mighty secret emperor, was actually suppressed by a dividing soul. But then he was shocked, because there was more than one such monster in the Saint Source Academy. And such people had boundless prospects, and the height they could reach was not something he could imagine. In other words, no matter how badly he was humiliated today, he would not have a chance for revenge in the future. The purpose of the academy was to nurture talents, and a genius like the Rain Emperor was the focus of nurturing. If anyone dared to touch a hair on the Rain Emperor, those ninth heaven celestial kings would explode. Thinking of this, Ji Yutong's fighting spirit naturally dropped. If he continued fighting, he would only suffer a crushing defeat. And if he could not get revenge, then what was the point of fighting? Humph, I am a secret emperor, and I disdain to bully a mere dividing soul. He threw out these words and suddenly turned to run. Of course, no one believed such nonsense, but with his strength, who dared to open their wounds in front of him? The Rain Emperor did not pursue. He closed his eyes slightly, thinking about his shortcomings in the battle just now. What was the most terrifying thing about a genius? It was that they would never be satisfied with their achievements, and would still be cautious and conscientious, advancing in the direction of greater strength. Ling Han found it strange. They had already caused such a big commotion, but why was there still no movement from the academy? Could it be that they really wanted to sweep the entire academy? In the academy, several important figures were also discussing. These 4 seedlings are all good, especially those 2 men. Both of them have cultivated 9 dividing soul, a ninth heaven celestial king said. He was an ancient celestial king, and his cultivation was ancient and modern. The second ninth firmament immortal king nodded and said, "The foreign realm is about to close in, and the world has undergone a huge change. Otherwise, there might not even be a genius who can cultivate the ninth soul in an epoch." His title was evergreen, and he was a veteran among veteran immortal kings. The third ninth firmament immortal king said, "If one cultivates the ninth soul, they will definitely become a ninth firmament immortal king in the future." With so many ninth soul geniuses appearing this time, can an even stronger existence emerge from the crowd? His title was Treading Cloud, and he was also a veteran celestial king. Heavenly Venerate. The primordial immortal king thought for a moment before shaking his head. Becoming an heavenly venerate isn't something that can be done with just hard work and talent. The heavens and earth are suppressing one. If one doesn't find a suitable opportunity, it will be impossible to break free from the shackles of the heavens and become an heavenly venerate. That's right. The heavens and earth don't allow uncontrollable energy to appear. Throughout the ages, how many Empyreans have there been? The evergreen immortal king expressed his agreement. However, this time, the other side has closed the pass, directly affecting the existence of this world. Who knows, this world might also undergo a limited change. Isn't the appearance of Dragon's Gate Mountain a compromise of the heavens and earth? Immortal King Treading Cloud had a different opinion. The primordial immortal king suddenly had an idea. He said, "If your deduction is correct, doesn't that mean that the 3 of them," he pointed to the sky, "are all born in response to the calamity? Otherwise, I definitely don't believe that anyone can transcend the laws," said Immortal King Treading Cloud. "The 3 of us have been in the ninth firmament for a long time now, but there is only darkness in front of us. There is no possibility of advancing at all. This is the heavens and earth restricting us, just like how it limits the height of the laws. Unless the heavens and earth release the restrictions, no one can surpass the limits of an immortal king. In other words, the invasion of the other side is actually an opportunity. Who knows? This group of youngsters, as well as Imperial Void, Ziluo, and Nadong, these newly advanced Ninth Firmament immortal kings, might be able to seize this opportunity to transcend the heavens and earth. The three great immortal kings sighed at each other. Even Ninth Firmament immortal kings had differences in strength. For example, Imperial Void, Ziluo, and Nadong, the three great immortal kings they spoke of, were well-known figures in the Ninth Firmament. Some had just advanced to the Ninth Firmament for a few tens of billions of years, while some had already advanced to the Ninth Firmament for 5 or 6 epochs. However, all of them were true overlords of the Ninth Firmament, and they had the highest chance of breaking through to the heavenly venerable tier. They were still far from that, and did not have the qualifications. The primordial immortal king suddenly said, "After defeating the foreign army this time, I want to travel to the foreign realm." "You're crazy." The evergreen immortal king paled. "The foreign realm is completely different from the celestial realm. The regulations we cultivate are completely useless there. If we enter there, we can only rely on the regulations locked in our bodies to battle. Once the regulations are used up, our strength will fall to an inconceivable level. Perhaps we will only be at the severing mundane tier." This was also suitable for the elites of the foreign realm. That was why the celestial realm could last for so long. "Brother Evergreen, in this realm, we can never stand out. However, in the foreign realm, although we will have to start from scratch, it is also possible that we have entered the sea from the pond, and there is more room for development." The primordial immortal king suggested another idea. "That's right." The stepping cloud celestial king nodded. "The level of the foreign realm's martial art is higher than ours. Otherwise, we should be the ones invading. Since that is the case, the possibility of breaking through to the heavenly venerable tier, there would also be much higher. We can reach the ninth heaven, which means that our talent and aptitude are all top-notch. As long as we are given a chance, why can't we break through to the ninth heaven?" The evergreen immortal king was silent for a moment, and then said, "Everything will still have to wait for the final battle. If we are defeated, then there is no need to mention anything else." "Naturally so." The other two celestial kings nodded. Only by protecting the celestial realm would they be able to think of other things. Otherwise, if the nest was overturned, how could the eggs be unbroken? "All right, let's take these 4 young people into the academy. It is not good to keep blocking the entrance," the stepping cloud celestial king said with a smile. The Trek Cloud immortal king laughed. He stretched out his hand and tapped the air a few times. After that, a law decree appeared above the academy. "The 4 of you, stop fooling around and immediately enter the academy. There will naturally be someone to make arrangements for you." He spoke very straightforwardly, without beating around the bush. Ling Han smiled faintly, stood up, and stored the table and chairs into the Black Tower. They could fool around, but if they didn't know how to restrain themselves when a celestial king had spoken, that would be courting death. They entered into the academy, and an ascending origin tier elite immediately came over to greet them. He smiled and said, "Young man, come with me." In celestial king tier level forces, ascending origin tiers really weren't much, and they couldn't put on any airs. Ling Han and the other 3 did not dare to be negligent. They had to show respect to experts. They entered the academy, and the ascending origin tier elite began to introduce himself to them. "My surname is Luo. You can call me Mr. Luo." "Mr. Luo." Ling Han and the other 3 readily accepted his advice. Mr. Luo nodded, then asked, "What rules do you major in?" Whatever law they cultivated, they would be arranged to live on a mountain of the corresponding attribute. That way, they would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Ling Han scratched his head. "Mr. Luo, you should ask me what rules I don't want to fix. That way I can answer you better." Mr. Luo. Chapter 22:14. How arrogant. The energy of most people was limited, especially for prodigies. To advance rapidly, they would definitely focus on one type of regulation to increase their cultivation level. Two people with the same aptitude, and one focused on water regulations, while the other focused on both water and fire regulations. Then, it would definitely be the person who focused on water regulations who would advance faster. And if they fought, the former would be stronger, because they could suppress the latter with their cultivation level. Only when one advanced into the Celestial King tier, when their advancement was really too slow, would they go and cultivate other regulations. Otherwise, they would just be idle. What did Ling Han mean by this? He cultivated the majority of regulations, and that was why he said that he didn't cultivate one type of regulation. You're a mere dividing soul tier. So won't your greed affect your advancement? Mr. Luo faltered, and then laughed loudly. He actually wasn't angered. He had received a personal divine sense transmission from the Celestial King, instructing him to properly entertain these four people. And being able to receive a personal command from a ninth heaven Celestial King, these four people naturally wouldn't be ordinary. Thus, though Mr. Luo faltered, he didn't think that Ling Han was arrogant. Perhaps this was the reason why he could receive the Celestial King's recognition. All right, you don't cultivate that kind of regulation? Mr. Luo asked. Seems like poison. Ling Han thought for a moment. Mr. Luo was in a difficult position. His towering mountains didn't know where to arrange for Ling Han to stay. I can stay anywhere, Ling Han said with a smile. He had obtained 9 source powers of heaven and earth, and this was the best thing to comprehend regulations. Even if he advanced into the Celestial King tier, he could still continue. Hunyao and the Empress didn't have any special requests. They also had a source power of heaven and earth, and could completely use it to break through to the Celestial King tier. As for the Rain Emperor, he didn't need it, either, because he had refined the remains of a Celestial King, and this was almost equivalent to a source power of heaven and earth. Thus, after a round of questioning, the four of them were all very casual, which made Mr. Luo slightly depressed. He had never seen students like them, and 4 of them had suddenly appeared. All right, you guys can stay anywhere. Mr. Luo couldn't be bothered with the headache, and simply handed the authority to the 4 of them. Let's stay in Herb Mountain. Ling Han suddenly had an idea. Mr. Luo would never have imagined that Ling Han would actually come up with such an idea. Even if he was an ascending origin tier elite, he was clearly dumbfounded for a moment. Black lines filled his forehead. Are you sure? Mr. Luo couldn't help but ask when he saw that the Rain Emperor and the others did not object. Yes. Ling Han and the other 3 nodded. In any case, there were source powers of heaven and earth, and the remains of celestial kings to comprehend regulations. And if he wanted to cultivate, the 100,000 times acceleration from the Black Tower was even more powerful. There was no need for him to make use of external conditions at all. What Ling Han needed was the resources provided by Saint Source Academy. All right. Mr. Luo nodded. He had received instructions from the Immortal King to give Ling Han and the other 3 sufficient autonomy, so he did not try to persuade them any further. The 4 of them found 4 adjacent immortals' caves on Herb Mountain and settled down. Of course, the Empress and Hunyao would definitely stay with Ling Han, and the Rain Emperor would enter into the Black Tower when he was cultivating. The 2 brothers discussed martial art, exchanged their experiences, and both benefited greatly. Their arrival caused a commotion in the academy. Soon, everyone knew that Ling Han and the Rain Emperor were supreme monarch tiers like Ji Wuming and the Chaos Desolation. They were clearly only in the Heaven Soul tier, but could rival a secret emperor, and even suppress them. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. Ji Wuming, the Chaos Desolation, and the others were really too powerful, even attracting monarch tiers to willingly bow down to them, causing the 4 of them to be unprecedentedly powerful. But now there were 2 more such supreme monarch tiers, and they were brothers of the opposite sex. If they advanced a step further, and also reached the Immortal Palace tier, then wouldn't they become the most powerful force in the academy? Would Ji Wuming and the other 3 watch this happen without doing anything? The answer was soon revealed. A mere day later, a person arrived in front of the immortals' caves of Ling Han and the others. This was a secret emperor, and the flame of his life had been burning for at least 1,000,000,000 years. When Ling Han saw him, he actually felt a piercing pain with his eyes. After channeling his origin power, this feeling disappeared. This person was extremely powerful, or at least more powerful than Ji Yutong. I'm Hu Yan. This secret emperor broke into a smile, his smile very peaceful. I once stayed in the void-resisting sect for a period of time. Void-resisting sect? Moreover, what did he mean by once? Could he still rebel after joining the void-resisting sect? I've come this time on the orders of Lord Chaos Desolation, and would like to invite the 4 of you to join our desolate alliance. Hu Yan was very amiable, his smile as gentle as jade. Oh, Ling Han didn't deny it. At this moment there were only him, the Empress, and Hu Niu. The Rain Emperor was a cultivation maniac, and he wanted to cultivate to the consummate level of the Heaven Soul tier, as soon as possible. Thus, he had been cultivating in seclusion in the Black Tower. Lord Chaos Desolation knows that Brother Han and Brother you are extremely talented, and your future achievements will definitely be astonishing as well. Thus, he specially vacated the positions of 2 Deputy Alliance Masters to wait for Brother Han and Brother Yu. Hu Yan continued. Ling Han chuckled, and was just about to speak when he saw another person appear. This was a beautiful woman dressed in red, and her figure was fiery hot. I'm Chia. The style of this woman's speech was also fiery hot. Our fairy Jialan would like to invite the 4 of you over to have a seat and discuss the details of the joint undertaking. Hu Yan frowned and said, Chia, there must be order in everything. I've already sent an invitation to Brother Han and the others, so you should wait for the next time. What a joke. In our world of cultivators, there is no such thing as order. Everything is based on strength. Chia's expression was filled with disdain. Our fairy Jialan will definitely dominate the celestial realm in the future, and become the one and only female empress. Assisting our fairy in ascending to the position is the wisest move. Nonsense. Hu Yan reprimanded. Luckily, his name was Hu Yan, and there was actually no discomfort when he said the 2 words, Hu Yan. Lord Chaos Desolation will be that one and only great emperor, sweeping through the ages and suppressing all generations. Humph, you can only be stubborn now. Not long from now, our fairy will teach the Chaos Desolation how to behave. Chia's expression was still filled with disdain. Wait. Ling Han pressed his hand down and said, You guys should stop arguing. I'm not interested in joining either side, so please go back. When he said this, Hu Yan and Chia both shut their mouths, and then walked towards him, their gazes somewhat cold. Young Master Han, this is Lord Chaos Desolation's invitation, Hu Yan said darkly. He changed his previous gentle appearance, and was like a ferocious tiger that tore off its disguise, revealing its true ferocious face. Chia was even more direct. She took out a long spear and said, Since my fairy has said that she wants to invite the 4 of you over, then I must do it. Ling Han dusted off his sleeves and said, I hate being threatened the most, so you guys had better leave as soon as possible before I get angry. Young Master Han, are you really not going to give me face? Hu Yan asked one last question. His battle intent was already boiling, transforming into many symbols such as blades and swords. There were also sonorous sounds that shook the heavens, and it was incomparably domineering. Are you threatening me? Ling Han asked in return. Chapter 22:16. Why did the 9 heavens flame have this kind of ability? That was because Ling Han had separated it and made it a part of his own soul, allowing it to have its own independence. Otherwise, if it was just a part of Ling Han's power, how could it have this kind of ability? Thus, it seemed that Ling Han had separated the power of heaven and earth, weakening himself, but making the 9 heavens flame even stronger. This was a kind of self-confidence. He firmly believed in his own strength, and that external power was ultimately unreliable. Han Lin, do you still not know when to stop? Hu Yan shouted harshly. Ling Han ignored him. The 9 heavens flame was currently deciphering the profound mysteries of the indestructible burning flame. Once it succeeded, it would be able to easily absorb the might of the flame, and not be like it was now, where it was suppressed by the height of its own quality. Furthermore, deciphering the profound mysteries of the indestructible burning flame would allow the nine heavens flame to possess the corresponding power of the regulations, which would be a great boost to it. This was also a good thing for Ling Han. He could also borrow the nine heavens flame to spy and analyze. "You're too arrogant." Hu Yan was furious. Surrounded by his indestructible burning flame, Ling Han actually dared to ignore him. What kind of contempt was this? He charged over, punching out, and flames soared into the sky. Ling Han also punched out. Pung! The two fists collided, and sparks flew everywhere, and lava splashed. Hu Yan roared continuously, punching out again and again, wanting to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han casually counterattacked. Hu Yan was indeed very strong, but when it came to wanting to suppress him, he could forget about it. Hu Yan might be able to fight evenly with the Rain Emperor, but he was definitely not a match for Ling Han. Ling Han did not use a heavy blow, because he was very interested in the indestructible burning flame. Hu Yan spoke so proudly, so this indestructible burning flame was probably not easy to obtain. Thus, since there was a ready-made one, Ling Han was naturally happy to be lazy and use a trick. The nine heavens flame was forcibly breaking through the mysteries of the eternal Empyrean flame on a qualitative level. This speed was too slow, so Ling Han could only continue to exchange blows with Hu Yan. He was unwilling to defeat this opponent so easily. Of course, Hu Yan was indeed very strong. If he wanted to defeat him, he would have to expend some effort. Hu Yan used all his trump cards. Immortal spells were activated from his hands, supplemented by the undying Agni fire. His combat power was so powerful that even Ji Yutong would not last more than 100 moves in front of him. Was this the monster raised by the void-resisting sect? Ling Han sighed ruefully in his heart. As expected of the Imperial Void Celestial King's disciple, and one of the strongest Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings, even the disciple he nurtured was so powerful. But Hu Yan was already so strong. What about the primordial world? Could this guy be from the Sealed Love Palace? It was very likely that no one had stipulated that Empyrean disciples couldn't run here to play. After all, if one worked behind closed doors, even with the guidance of an Empyrean, one's achievements would still be limited. A martial artist should fight all the way to the strongest. He was lost in thought. After an unknown period of time, the nine heavens flame suddenly sent him a thought. That was, it had already obtained the secrets of the undying Agni fire. Ling Han spread out his hands, and the nine heavens flame turned into an ancient rune. However, compared to before, this rune had an extra stroke. Although it was pitifully small, it truly existed. This was like a flower that had already bloomed a petal. Now the tip of the second petal was out. Although there was still a long way to go before it bloomed, it had, after all, begun. Enlightenment rose in Ling Han's heart. When the flower bloomed 9 petals, the nine heavens flame would reach the level of a ninth heaven celestial king. However, this was the limit. This was because there were 9 ranks in heaven and earth. It could not be surpassed or broken through. As long as one lived in this starry sky, one had to abide by the rules of heaven and earth. Ling Han frowned. How did an illegitimate child like the Empyrean come about? Under the rules, how could one break through the rules? Could one go to the alien realm? When this thought rose up, even Ling Han gave himself a fright. To say nothing of how to pass through the connection point of the 2 realms. Even if he could, the rules that he cultivated would be completely useless in the alien realm. His strength might even be inferior to a severing mundane tier. Wouldn't that be like a lamb walking into a tiger's den? Just how could he leap out of the pond of heaven and earth? Ling Han couldn't help but feel vexed. A sense of irritation rose up in his heart. Haha, do you know fear now? Hu Yan asked with a cold smirk. He only thought that Ling Han was frowning, because he was afraid. Ling Han glared at him. How annoying. Did you come here to ask for a beating? His anger flared up, and he immediately launched a fierce counterattack. Boom! The 9 heavens flame expanded, and instantly repelled the magma, giving Ling Han some space to move. What? Hu Yan mouthed this word soundlessly, his expression filled with disbelief. Not to mention that a 5th severance could be called a monarch tier, and could definitely become a celestial king in the future. However, There would also be a huge difference in battle prowess between celestial kings. Why? That was because every cultivation level that one had cultivated would affect the battle prowess of a celestial king, such as 9 dividing soul tier, or what kind of method one had used to refine a mystery realm in the immortal palace tier. The reason why Hu Yan looked down on Ji Yutong and viewed him as trash was because Ji Yutong's method of cultivating a mystery realm was trash in his eyes, and the difference in battle prowess between the two of them was also incredibly obvious. Monarch tiers had to cultivate every cultivation level to perfection. Otherwise, monarch tiers would also be reduced to emperor tiers or king tiers. So what if they were destined to become celestial kings? They would still be trash among celestial kings, or they would have long since been killed by others. Ling Han was completely unconcerned and merely threw out a violent punch with his fists. Once he could ignore the incinerating flame, Hu Yan's battle prowess would comparatively drop greatly. What could he use to stop Ling Han's outburst? Impossible, Hu Yan finally shouted. He hadn't obtained the incinerating flame with his own power, but rather the Imperial Void Celestial King had personally helped him suppress the fiendish and destructive power in the flame, which allowed him to obtain it after comprehending for 99 years. This kind of fiendish flame could even rival the might of a celestial king, provided that he had reached the celestial king tier. This was also the source of his pride. How many people in the immortal palace tier could reach this kind of height? But Ling Han had only been trapped by him for a short while, and then suddenly displayed his invincible might, dispelling the incinerating flame. How could he believe this? Nothing is impossible. In my eyes, you are merely trash, so what difficulty is there in defeating trash? Ling Han said calmly. Flames burst out of his fists, forming an ancient and dignified seal. Pung pung pung. At first, Hu Yan could have withstood 100 moves before being defeated, but because his will had been stolen, his fighting spirit had also plummeted. How could he resist Ling Han in this state? He was violently beaten and screamed endlessly. In a mere dozen or so blows, Hu Yan collapsed to the ground. The lava all over the ground had lost its source and was no longer boiling or surging. Instead, it was rapidly suppressed by the formation of this place and turned into nothingness. Ling Han looked towards Chiya, causing this fiery woman to involuntarily take a step back. There was an intense fear on her face, as if she was worried that she would also be violently beaten by Ling Han. Go back and tell Jialan. Ling Han picked Hu Yan up. And you, go tell the Desolate Era that if he wants to come and be a guest, I will very much welcome him. But he needs to show some sincerity. And don't let you strays come and disturb me. Scram. He waved his hand, and Hu Yan was instantly thrown far away by him. Chapter 22:17. When Chiya saw this, she could not help but shrink her body, and quickly turned around to flee. Haha. Ling Han laughed, and sat down to continue drinking tea. The Empress and Hunyo didn't take this to heart. Although the Desolation and Kirin had already advanced into the Immortal Palace tier, and with the might of a Supreme Monarch tier, Ling Han definitely couldn't be a match for them. However, this was the Saint Source Academy, and there were still rules. He believed that these two people would not dare to bully others so brazenly. However, in merely a short moment, a gigantic divine palm suddenly descended from the sky. The palm was translucent like jade, and numerous runes were incomparably resplendent as they smashed down with unparalleled might. Ling Han hurriedly grabbed the two girls, unfolded the void spirit space, and moved swiftly. Boom! The gigantic palm descended, and with a boom, the 4 caves of Ling Han and the others were all reduced to ruins at the same time, while Ling Han also vomited blood again and again. Fortunately, the 2 women were hidden behind him and did not suffer too much impact, unlike Ling Han, who was touched by the aftermath of the giant spirit palm. This was too frightening. It was just a shockwave, yet it had such power. An ascending origin tier elite had made his move. This is a warning. No one can humiliate the people of the wilderness. A voice rang out, filled with boundless domineeringness. Primeval. The person who attacked was actually primordial chaos. He was only a first secret. A transcendent god was indeed powerful. Ling Han nodded to himself. It was no wonder that Untainted Land could stand side by side with Ji Wuming. If he were to fight with Ji Wuming, who was a realm higher than him, there was no need to mention the outcome. He would die miserably. The person didn't even appear. Just a palm strike from a distance had caused him to suffer minor injuries. If he hadn't reacted in time, he might even have been seriously injured. Moreover, this person was extremely domineering. This was the Saint Source Academy, but Untainted Land had openly attacked Ling Han. He was bullying the weak, and had completely ignored the basic rules. Such arrogance was rare. I'll give you 3 days to report to the Sweep Alliance as a sweeper. Otherwise, I won't break your abode next time. Chaotic's voice was heard again. You're asking for trouble. His voice rumbled, and he didn't hold back at all. It was as if he really didn't even take Immortal Kings seriously. Ling Han's face darkened. The actions of the Untainted Land had exceeded his expectations. How could this guy be so arrogant? First secret, he said coldly. Just because he was one realm higher than him, he could act so arrogantly. Did he think that he would not break through? Primordial desolation. Is it fun to bully a newcomer like this? Someone with a lower realm than you? A voice rang out. Sure Chanzi, how dare you meddle in my affairs? Chaos Desolation raised his voice a notch, his domineering aura blazing. The second person was actually Sure Chanzi, one of the 4 supreme emperors. No wonder he was fighting against the primordial world. Hee. Sure Chanzi just smiled faintly. I'm just not used to it. If you want to fight, I don't mind turning into a fighting Buddha and exchanging pointers with you. The last battle didn't have a winner. This time, there should be a result. Chaos Desolation said loudly. Come and fight. Whoosh. A figure flashing with golden light soared into the sky. Then another figure flew into the sky. Boom. A dazzling light immediately appeared in the sky. Although it was extremely far away, it could be seen clearly. The 2 supreme emperors had already started fighting. Ling Han was surprised. Why did Sure Chanzi stand up for him? Could it be that he also wanted to recruit Ling Han? No one knew who won. However, the primordial world didn't mention anything about letting Ling Han go to the Sweep Alliance as a janitor. It was obvious that he didn't win against Sure Chanzi. However, Sure Chanzi didn't care about Ling Han anymore, which surprised Ling Han a little. After waiting for another 3 days, Ling Han decided to pay a visit to Sure Chanzi. He wanted to know what kind of person he was. He went to the cave abode, where Sure Chanzi lived alone. The door to Sure Chanzi's cave was wide open, and there was a gentle-looking young man standing at the door. When Ling Han walked over, he bowed slightly and said, So it's young Master Han who has arrived. Lord Arhut has been waiting for a long time, please enter. What kind of medicine was buried here? Ling Han strode into the cave abode. It was a completely different world. He used the space secret technique. It didn't look big on the outside, but it was not small on the inside. Lotus flowers were planted everywhere in the cave abode. There were ordinary ones, 5-leaf silver lotuses, 9-leaf golden lotuses, and 18-leaf purple lotuses. The fragrance of the lotus spread for thousands of miles. Walking into the depths of the cave abode, there was a white lotus in the middle of a lake. The flower was about 3 meters long. In the center of the lake sat a bald monk wearing a golden kasaya. Ling Han glanced at it, and suddenly felt like his soul had been sucked out of his body. He fell into an indescribable darkness. He was shocked and quickly guarded his mind. Only then did he pull his soul back. Sure Chanzi, one of the 4 great supreme emperors. This guy was too extraordinary. What you want to ask is why this little monk helped you. Before Ling Han could speak, the monk spoke first. Ling Han nodded and said, Why? The 2 of them were not related. How could there be good things in the world without a reason? Sure Chanzi smiled slightly. Can't this little monk help when I see injustice? Ling Han also smiled and said, Although there is such a possibility, I still believe there is a deeper reason. Sure Chanzi looked at Ling Han a few times and said, Yes, someone asked me to help you. Who? Ling Han asked. That person told me not to say his name. So I'm sorry. Sure Chanzi bowed slightly. Ling Han felt strange. Although there were many people who were willing to help him, he really couldn't think of anyone who had such a big face to ask Sure Chanzi to help. He thought in his heart and said, No matter what, I still have to thank you for your help. Shirchanzi smiled and said, however, I really paid a great price to help you. He did not hesitate, and pulled open the kasaya on his chest, only to see a fist mark on his heart. The primordial world hegemonic fist has reached the great success stage, he said while covering the kasaya again. This person comes from the Sealed Emotion Palace. He really can't be underestimated. The Sealed Emotion Palace? Ling Han's heart suddenly jumped, and a few doubts were immediately solved. Why did Hu Yan take the primordial world as his master? Because the void-resisting sect originally belonged to the Sealed Emotion Palace. And why did the primordial world dare to be so arrogant? Because behind him stood a celestial master. Even the ninth heaven immortal king did not dare to interfere too much. Shirchanzi dared to make a move not because he was more courageous than the immortal king, but because if he made a move, it would be impossible to attract a celestial master to help. In a battle of the same level, not to mention a supreme existence like the celestial master, even the immortal king would not interfere. Otherwise, such a disciple was too useless. Why would they accept him? This is a qi mixed essence pill. It is good for healing injuries, Ling Han said, and then threw a pill bottle to Shirchanzi. Shirchanzi caught it and couldn't help but be surprised. He said, this is a 3-star medicinal pill for healing injuries. I didn't expect you to have such a treasure. Oh, it is even a 7-fold spirit refinement. This time he was really shocked. Chapter 22:18. Even among 4-star grandmasters, a 7-fold spirit refinement was rather rare. However, for a 4-star grandmaster to concoct a 3-star alchemical pill with a 7-fold spirit enhancement on top of that, wasn't he a little too free? I made it, Ling Han said with a smile. The other party had helped him a lot, so he didn't mind revealing some of his trump cards to the other party. Shirchanzi was even more astonished. If Ling Han was only a 4-star alchemy grandmaster, or even a 5-star alchemy grandmaster, he wouldn't care. After all, he was a supreme Dharch, and would definitely become a 9th firmament immortal king in the future. Why would he care about a 5-star alchemy grandmaster? However, Ling Han had another identity. He was also a peerless emperor, who had cultivated 9 divided souls. This was terrifying. There was actually such a genius in this world. Han Lin, this little monk has underestimated you, Shirchanzi said slowly. Ling Han chuckled and said, how's the combat power of the primordial world? Very strong. Shirchanzi revealed a cautious expression. Then he smiled. However, he was also hit by my 1,000 worlds finger. His injuries are definitely not lighter than mine. This smile was filled with confidence and arrogance. Come on, this monk's 6 senses have not been purified, and he is still full of competitiveness. Myriad World Fingerling Han suddenly recalled that when he and Ji Wuming had joined hands to fight Yulan Fenghua, Ji Wuming had used a secret technique that caused Yulan Fenghua's expression to change greatly, causing her to cry out the words Myriad World Finger. Could it be that Ji Wuming was related to Shirchanzi? An idea came to him, and he said, Ji Wuming asked you to help. He said this in a firm tone. Shirchanzi was slightly taken aback, but then he smiled. I didn't expect you to guess it so quickly. Ling Han's mind raced. Ji Wuming was the reincarnation of a 9th firmament immortal king, but his identity before his reincarnation had been guessed by Xu Yaring and Tang Minglong. However, Ling Han had no clue. Ji Wuming, this murderous fellow, was actually a Buddhist. Wait a minute. The Buddhist sects had only produced a total of 3 9th firmament immortal monarchs. However, 2 of them had always presided over the Buddhist sections. Only the founder of the Buddhist sects, 9 Lanterns, was said to have vanished. However, no one knew if he was dead or had entered seclusion somewhere. I should be able to confirm that Ji Wuming is the reincarnation of the 9 Lanterns' ancient Buddha. No wonder. Since the 9 Lanterns' Buddha had spoken, Shirchanzi naturally had to do as he was told. After all, this was an order from the great ancestor. With this primordial qi pill, my injuries will recover about a month earlier than expected. Shirchanzi laughed. When the time comes, I will go to the desolate land to learn from each other and anger him to death. Their strengths were on par with each other, and both of them had suffered heavy injuries. How long would it take for Sherchanzi to recover? Untainted Desolation would also need about the same amount of time. But now that Sherchanzi had the 7th refinement of the primordial chi pill, his recovery time was greatly accelerated. If he went to fight the primordial world, would the other party agree or not? If he agreed, he would definitely lose. If he didn't, he would be laughed at by Sherchanzi. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. He had been bullied by the primordial world, and couldn't take revenge at the moment. He was happy that Sherchanzi would use this method to disgust him. Furthermore, Ling Han was also involved in this, so it could be considered as a form of revenge. Ji Wuming was also an interesting person. He could clearly match the primordial world by himself, but he chose to rely on Sherchanzi. Was he deliberately not letting Ling Han appreciate his kindness? Ling Han shook his head. A great battle would eventually break out between him and Ji Wuming. He also had a feeling that if a new celestial lord could be born in this world, it would definitely be between him and Ji Wuming. No matter how powerful Sherchanzi, the primordial world, and the unknown Kirin were, they always lacked something. This made Ling Han feel that they couldn't stand out from the crowd. Ling Han took the opportunity to ask Sherchanzi about the 9 lanterns ancient Buddha. However, Sherchanzi had a sense of propriety. He said what should be said very happily, but didn't say a word that shouldn't be said. In the end, Ling Han's understanding of the 9 lanterns ancient Buddha was still limited to the legends of the outside world. He knew that Sherchanzi definitely wouldn't say anything, so he thanked him again and left the cave. Now there were 6 Supreme Monarch tiers in the academy, but Ling Han and the Rain Emperor were undoubtedly the weakest. They hadn't advanced into the Immortal Palace tier, so they didn't have the qualifications to contend with Ji Wuming and the others. It's time to break through to the Immortal Palace tier, Ling Han murmured. Like the Severing Mundane tier and Dividing Soul tier, breaking through to the Immortal Palace tier also required a specific place. However, the difference was that Heaven Soul, Earth Soul, Yin Soul, and Yang Soul all had to go to different places, while Severing Mundane tier only had to go once. Immortal Palace tier was the same as Dividing Soul tier. Every time one broke through to the next tier, they had to go to the Immortal Palace tier Mystery Realm. However, they could repeatedly go to the same place to cultivate all 5 mystery realms. Thinking of this, Ling Han couldn't help but ask Small Tower, is there any tier above 5 secrets in the Immortal Palace tier, like 5th Severance or Dividing Soul tier? Hee, I thought you wouldn't ask. Small Tower laughed. It seemed like this guy was looking down on him again. Ling Han shook his head and said, I knew you had a sharp tongue. Did you think you could hurt me with such a small blow? Small Tower didn't continue to joke around, and said, the mystery realms in the human body are not just the 5 internal organs. There are also the 6 internal organs. Ling Han faltered, and his mouth gaped slightly. You mean that there are a total of 11 minor levels in this cultivation level? The Dividing Soul tier was already very freakish. There were a total of 9 minor levels in order to reach consummate level. But the Immortal Palace tier was even more freakish. It needed 11 minor levels. If you passed the math test, then that's correct. Small Tower didn't forget to continue to look down on Ling Han. However, the Immortal Palace mystery realms don't have any restrictions. It doesn't have to be this cultivation level to go here, and that cultivation level to go there. Moreover, there is no time limit for their opening. It paused for a moment, and then said, you have the Black Tower's 100,000 times acceleration of time, so it isn't very difficult for you to cultivate all 11 mystery realms. You'll probably only need a few billion years. Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. A few billion years? That was too long, wasn't it? Fortunately, the Black Tower's 100,000 times acceleration of time was indeed powerful enough. After conversion, it would only take a few tens of thousands of years in reality. He counted on his fingers. The Immortal Palace tier would take tens of thousands of years. So how long would it take to ascend to the Origin tier? There was also the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier. So how many years would it take to become qualified to advance to the Heavenly Venerable tier? The Foreign Realm was about to close, or the heaven and earth wouldn't be so urgent. Did he have so much time? Even so, it was impossible for Ling Han to just cultivate 5 mystery realms. Only by cultivating each cultivation level to perfection would there be hope of advancing to the heavenly venerable tier. Anything less would be imperfect. Otherwise, Ji Wuming wouldn't have needed to reincarnate. Alright, I'll first study how to cultivate the first mystery realm. The Immortal Palace tier was to cultivate a mystery realm within one's body. But how to cultivate a mystery realm? One would have to go to a mystery realm of heaven and earth to comprehend, and borrow the power within to complete it. For example, Huyen. He had borrowed the burning indestructible flame in Mount Afan to refine his heart into the first mystery realm of the human body. Ling Han's situation was slightly more special. He cultivated too many regulations, so he had to think about which mystery realm he would go to cultivate his first mystery realm. Was it the same for each cultivation level, or was it different? It's best to use the regulations of time to temper them all. Then, after cultivating the Wuzong mystery realm, your physique will evolve into the grand cosmic celestial physique. Small Tower paused, and then continued. And after cultivating the 6 organs, your physique can be further improved and become the grand cosmic infinity physique. Chapter 2220. Lu Jun almost knelt down. Even if Ling Han was a genius 10,000 times more freakish than Ji Wuming, that Lu Jun would at most clasp his shoulders and say that he was impressive, and then say nothing else. But now, he wanted to prostrate himself in worship of Ling Han and revere him as a god. Too awesome. There was actually such an alchemy prodigy that crushed him by more than a street, and could even become his master. He was an alchemy prodigy, so only an even stronger alchemy prodigy could subdue him. Young Master Han. He looked up at Ling Han, his eyes filled with worship. What do you mean less? Hurry up and refine pills for me. By the time I reach the 8th refinement, if you still can't increase the success rate to 60%, I'll beat you to my heart's content. Ling Han glared at him. I'll definitely work hard, Lu Jun said, patting his chest, the respect in his eyes even stronger. 8th refinement. He was only at the 4th refinement, and Ling Han was already beginning to break through to the 8th refinement. And if he took another step beyond the 8th refinement, that would mean that Ling Han would advance into the level of a 5-star alchemist. Even in the Western Celestial Realm, there were not many 5-star alchemists. He was instantly filled with motivation, and even had the thought of following Ling Han. This kind of prodigy was really too rare. If he could follow him, not only would he be proud, he would also gain countless benefits. Ling Han did not take it to heart. He also walked to the side and began to perform spirit refinement. Spirit refinement had nothing to do with the level of the alchemical pill, so Ling Han only chose 1-star alchemical pills and then performed spirit refinement. It could be predicted that the 8th refinement would fail, and countless alchemical pills would definitely be wasted. Thus, wasn't using high-grade alchemical pills to perform spirit refinement a gargantuan waste? Ling Han began to struggle in the Black Tower, and would occasionally come out to hand the alchemical pills that Lu Jun had refined to the Empress and the others, so that they could sell them in medicine stores and exchange them for some money. This was actually not enough for him to squander, because the speed of his spirit refinement was too fast. Even if he only wasted 1-star alchemical pills, it could not keep up with his speed. It could be imagined that even he, a 4-star alchemist and a 7 refinement expert, had expended so much energy. So how difficult would it be for him to reach the 8 refinement, or even a 5-star alchemist? Sometimes, it wasn't that one didn't have enough talent, but rather that one didn't have enough money. Even a celestial king tier force couldn't afford to be defeated like this. Fortunately, he had confiscated all of Lu Jun's belongings, and coupled with the fact that he had quite a bit of savings, he was barely able to sustain his extravagant spending. If he really ran out of money, he would also refine some 4-star elixirs to relieve some of his stress. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed in the outside world. Under Ling Han's guidance, Lu Jun had successfully advanced to the 5th refinement and successfully became a 4-star grandmaster. Based on the time in the Black Tower, 1 million years had already passed, and the deadline for Lu Jun to sell himself had long since passed. However, this guy had tasted the sweetness, yet did not mention anything about leaving at all, and only continued to concoct alchemical pills silently. He could finally tell that Ling Han had no intention of keeping his skills for himself at all. As long as he focused on concocting alchemical pills, the latter would guide him. It was not that Ling Han was fond of talent, but rather that he was fond of wealth and wanted to earn more. Lu Jun had no objections to this. He, too, wanted to earn a bit more for Ling Han, because this meant that his ability in alchemy would still continue to rise. And after 1,000,000 years, Ling Han had finally touched the edge of the 8th refinement. It's really difficult. It's already 1,000,000 years, and I've only touched the doorstep. Ling Han was very rueful. If these words were heard by Grandmaster Zicheng, he would definitely slap Ling Han's face. One had to know how many years Grandmaster Zicheng had lived, and how long he had been stuck at the level of the 7th refinement. That was a few million years, or even more than a few 100,000,000 years, yet there was not the slightest sign of breaking through. Did you think 1,000,000 years was too long? Moreover, this was still in the Black Tower, and only 10 years had passed in the outside world. 10 years. I'm confident that I can succeed within 10 times. Ling Han's eyes shone, filled with confidence. He continued to concoct alchemical pills. Once, twice, thrice. When he reached the 7th time, the alchemical pill in his hand did not explode again. Instead, an 8th golden streak appeared. 8th refinement. Success! Ling Han was stunned at first, and then he laughed loudly. 1,000,000 years, how long was that? He did not stop, but rather continued to perform spirit refinement, consolidating his abilities. In the beginning, the success rate was naturally very low, less than 10%, but very soon, it increased to 20%, 35%, 50%, 70%, 90%. However, he was still unable to reach a 100% success rate. It was as if there was a mysterious power in the world controlling him, not allowing him to be so nature-defying. The moon waxes and wanes, and the affairs of the world can never be perfect. Is this the logic? Ling Han murmured. 90% was about right. Small tower, what about the formula for that alchemical pill? Ling Han asked. Thankfully, Small Tower knew this pill formula. Otherwise, if he had to go to some ancient site to try his luck again, Ling Han would definitely go crazy. He began to concoct the alchemical pill. This was a 4-star alchemical pill, and it was very complicated to concoct. Even Ling Han was slightly confused at the beginning. After failing at least a dozen times, he finally found a clue. With experience, he slowly advanced. Another few thousand years passed, and Ling Han finally succeeded in concocting his first cauldron of alchemical pills. This is the Millennium Dream Pill, but I have never seen it in the alchemy manuals before, Ling Han muttered to himself. Ling Han mumbled to himself. In his hand, there was an alchemical pill that was overflowing with light and vibrant colors, manifesting the vicissitudes of time. It must reach perfect quality, and then perform spirit refinement 8 times. Only then will you be able to open up the corridor of time, and send your soul to the point where the past, present, and future intersect. That is where the mystery realm of time is located, Small Tower said. Ling Han nodded, and continued to concoct the alchemical pill. Thankfully, he was not only a 4-star alchemist, but also the alchemy emperor. After succeeding once, he would not fail again. Every time he successfully concocted an alchemical pill, the quality of the alchemical pill would improve greatly. After 1,000 years, the Millennium Dream Pill he had concocted finally reached perfect quality. He began to perform spirit refinement. This was much easier. With a success rate as high as 90%, he only failed once, and concocted 5 Millennium Dream Pills. One for himself, one for the Empress, one for Hunyeo, one for the Rain Emperor, and the last for Bewitching Maiden Ro. She was also about to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. If she could form 11 mystery realms, Bewitching Maiden Ro would definitely be able to shorten the gap between her and a Monarch tier, even if she did not advance into Monarch tier. Coincidentally, the Rain Emperor had also reached consummate level of the Dividing Soul tier. and could break through to the immortal palace tier. The 5 of them all entered into the Black Tower. If they wanted to break through to the immortal palace tier, the Black Tower was naturally the safest place. Otherwise, even if they stayed in their abodes, they could still be destroyed by others. After this encounter, Ling Han naturally would not take any further risks. Speaking of the desolate era, the 5 of them were all extremely angry and held back their anger. When they broke through to the immortal palace tier, they would definitely beat this bastard up. The 5 of them simultaneously took out Millennium Dream pills and then swallowed them. After a short while, the medicinal effects of the pills took effect. This was a 4-star alchemical pill, and its power was immense. It effortlessly swept the 5 of their spirits out of their minds, and then with a light shake, they began to fly faster. With a thought from Ling Han, Xiao, the Black Tower opened slightly, and their spirits flew out. In the space of the Black Tower, it was impossible for them to pass through the long river of time. When their spirits appeared, a few powerful figures in the academy immediately exclaimed in surprise. The long river of time had been disturbed. Chapter 22-21. Time was the most mysterious power. Time could not be reversed. Even the most powerful person would not dare to trace back time in an attempt to reverse the past, affect the present, and shake the future. Yet now, those great figures noticed that someone had actually entered the river of time and was swimming against the current. They were all shocked. Then, they activated their divine eyes, searching through the great river of time. So, his soul has entered the river of time. The effect of the Millennium Dreamless pill. It's impossible to change the past and affect the present and the future. But to think that the Thousand Autumns Dreamless pill has reappeared. This is a forbidden method. The heavens do not allow it to appear, as it would incur the jealousy of the heavens. It has long been lost. Did those 5 obtain heaven-earth luck? The few mighty figures communicated with their divine will before retracting their gazes. Even though they were all 9th heaven immortal kings, it was impossible for them to go against the flow of time. It was a taboo that even they could not do. Ling Han's group of 5 went against the flow of time. They felt the evolution of the stars in the universe, but it wasn't real. Everything happened too fast. But their speed was still increasing, getting faster and faster, to the point where they couldn't see anything at all. They could only see time continuously retreating. When their speed reached an extreme, the past, present, and future would all lose their meaning. Speed would also lose its meaning. They suddenly entered a state of absolute stillness from their rapid movements. Everything around them became grotesque and motley, and the colors were motley and indescribable. Is this the secret realm of time? Ling Han followed Small Tower's instructions and started walking. Right now he was just a divine soul, so there was no such thing as a physical body. He could transform into anything he wanted, but he still turned into himself. Not only him, but the Empress, Bewitching Maiden Ro, and the Rain Emperor also looked like him. However, they were like orbs of light, and had a kind of hazy feeling to them. Hunyo, on the other hand, was different. One moment, she was a floating white cloud. The next moment, she was a pig, a dog, and the next moment, she was Ling Han. She was having a great time playing around. When they spoke, they directly used their divine senses to transmit their thoughts. No matter how far away they were, they could instantly transmit their thoughts to others. Keep going, Ling Han said. After walking for a while, a surging river appeared in front of them. The river water was extremely strange. It was actually the sun, moon, and stars rising and falling, the passage of time flowing. The river of time, and the others were all astonished. The river of time was originally just a metaphor. They had never thought that such an existence would actually appear before their eyes. Don't touch. Ling Han warned. Time cannot be reversed. Although we are soul bodies and cannot disturb the flow of time, as long as we touch it, we will be assimilated by time, and will never be able to return to our physical bodies. This was what Small Tower had said, and it was extremely serious. The Rain Emperor and the others all nodded. Though Hunyo was very unwilling, she still pouted in agreement. They went against the river of time, and in the river, they saw the events that happened in the distant past. However, they did not understand most of the things. The images were too fragmented and meaningless. What I want to know is when the Heavenly Lord of Original Life died. Also, 8 epochs ago, the tide of darkness erupted. The river of time was arranged according to time. The closer one was to the source, the more distant the events would be. The 5 traced back the flow of time. Suddenly, a wave surged and slapped towards the 5 of them. Get out of the way! Ling Han hurriedly moved, grabbing the 3 girls at the same time, and quickly retreating. The Rain Emperor's reaction was not slow at all, and he was almost on par with Ling Han. If you are hit by the river of time, that instant is an eternity, and you will be lost in eternity. This was the most mysterious and greatest power in the world. The flow of time could be traced back, but it definitely could not be touched to affect the present and change the future. 1 epoch, 2 epochs, 3 epochs. They walked for an unknown amount of time. In this passage of time, time itself was meaningless. There was no past and future here, only the present. No matter where Ling Han and the others went, that place was the present. 8 epochs. They had finally reached a critical juncture, but they were immediately disappointed. The river of time in this section was completely unclear, as if the water had been muddled. Why not? Hunyo asked curiously. Could it be that this section of history is too important, and heaven and earth are not allowed to see it? Ling Han guessed. It involved a celestial venerable, so this was naturally important. Let's go, perhaps we can find more clues ahead. They continued forward, following the river of time. In the passage of time, they met many great figures of later generations, such as the 9 Lanterns ancient Buddha, and the Imperial Void Celestial King, allowing Ling Han to finally have a deeper understanding of these great figures. They continued to trace back like this, but from time to time, there would always be a fault, burying some great events deep. 10 epochs, 50 epochs, 100 epochs. The antiquity of the celestial realm made one's hair stand on end. After passing through 100 epochs, there was still no end, and there was still the river of time surging. However, the fault of time was also everywhere, hiding who knew how much truth. 140 epochs. They finally reached the end of the river of time, and a plain appeared in front of them. There were stalks of grass, but upon closer inspection, these grasses quickly withered. Some grass seeds fell, and very soon new grass sprouted, thriving and growing, repeating this process. Ling Han was at first disapproving, and then shocked. These grasses were actually celestial medicines. How long could celestial medicines live for? If it was celestial king tier medicines, an epoch wasn't something rare. But here, from the time these celestial medicines were born to the time of decay, it was visible to the naked eye. How terrifying was the flow of time. If we go in, will we instantly age? The Empress also came out, speaking up, feeling apprehension. We won't. Ling Han shook his head. We took the 1,000-year single dream pill. And while the medicinal effects last, nothing can happen to us. They advanced, crossing the river of time, entering that plain. True enough, they were protected by a mysterious power, not being decayed by the power of time. The plain was astonishingly large. They walked and walked, silently calculating time. Perhaps over 100 years had passed, but the plain was still the same plain. When they turned back, the edge of the plain was actually behind them. In other words, they walked for over 100 years, but in reality, they practically didn't advance in the slightest. In this place, time was chaotic, order and disorder coexisting. Wang, a terrifying power swept over. Ling Han and the others simultaneously felt a strong chill, as if they had fallen into a cold cave, and even their souls were instantly frozen. In the sky, an eye appeared. Strangely, this was a vertical eye. The sclera of the eye was golden, and the pupil was silver. There were indescribable seals flashing, as if explaining the secrets of time. This vertical eye swept over Ling Han and the others. Wang, a celestial sword fell out of the eye, releasing endless cold light, and slashed towards Ling Han and the others. Even a 9th heaven celestial king couldn't attack in the river of time. This would reverse the past and the future. Only a celestial venerable could not be affected by the regulations and act recklessly. Hiss, this was actually a celestial venerable attacking. Reading on the phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 22:22. A beautiful romance. Heavens! A celestial venerable attacked. Even a ninth firmament immortal king could not withstand it, much less Ling Han and company, who were mere soul splitters. What to do? Wait for death. In this plane, the flow of time was extremely strange. It could be astonishingly fast or ridiculously slow. Even celestial venerables would be affected. The immortal sword slashed over at an astonishing speed, but it did not slash down no matter how far it traveled through the sky. During this process, the runes on the immortal sword dimmed, as though it had experienced endless years, and was about to perish in the flow of time. Ling Han instantly came to a realization. This heavenly venerate was not from the same era as them, and it should have been impossible for them to ever meet. However, Wu asked them to all enter the time mystery realm, which was why they had encountered each other. Before the immortal sword could slash down, it disappeared on its own. This was a power that could not withstand the flow of time. Ling Han and company were aghast. An attack that could defy the flow of time for such a long period of time, only to be extinguished. What kind of mighty power was this? A celestial venerable could transcend the laws. If not for the fact that it was impossible for a celestial venerable to transcend the laws of the world, the might of this attack would be even more powerful. It could ignore the flow of time and kill them. But why did this celestial venerable attack them without a word? In the sky, the single eye narrowed slightly. A streak of blood appeared in the white of the silver eye. Silver blood flowed out. Even if a celestial venerable could defy the flow of time and attack, he would still suffer the punishment of the world. There were some laws that even celestial venerables could not violate. Otherwise, they would still suffer the backlash. However, celestial venerables were truly too powerful. Even the world could not do anything to them. If it were anyone else, even a ninth firmament immortal king would have been reduced to ashes. I found your blurry figures downstream in the river of time. I can't let you live. The vertical eye transmitted a blurry thought. It was too far away, so the voice was indistinct. This celestial lord must have entered the river of time at some point in history, and caught sight of Ling Han's group of 5 passing by. Then he unleashed his great divine ability, and saw a corner of Ling Han's group of 5's future. He believed that they might affect him in the future, so he did not hesitate to go against the flow of time, using the past to kill the present, even if it meant suffering a backlash from the heavens and earth. Ling Han laughed heartily. This meant that one of the 5 of them must have become a heavenly lord. Only then could a heavenly lord feel apprehensive. Otherwise, even if all of them had become 9th heavenly immortal kings, they wouldn't even be worth mentioning. However, this Empyrean was really stingy. Could it be that he couldn't tolerate others? Also, since this Empyrean had discovered the threat of the 5 of them in history, why hadn't he made a move in the real timeline? Could it be that he had died long ago? No way. If he was already dead, then he shouldn't have treated the 5 of them as a threat. Could it be that this Empyrean had gone against the flow of time and suffered a backlash from the heavens and earth? After he left, he no longer retained such memories? Otherwise, there was no way to explain this. So what if there's a gap in time? So what if there's a backlash from karma? If this Empyrean wants to kill, then not even the heavens can stop him. The vertical eye emitted a divine sense. Boom! An even more powerful aura erupted from it, and it was as if the heavens and earth had to prostrate before it. Wung! The vertical eye once again sent out a claw. It was as black as ink, and it pressed down on Ling Han's group of 5. This claw was entwined with countless runes. When it struck out, even this mystic realm that didn't exist in the heavens and earth trembled. Compared to the immortal sword from before, the might of this attack was instantly 100-fold greater. Boom! The black claw struck out with incredible speed. Even the endless flow of time couldn't stop it from unleashing its might. Ling Han's group of 5 wanted to run, but no matter how they flew, they couldn't move. In this world, the flow of time was incomparably strange. Could it be that they were going to die here? Ling Han's heart was icy cold, to say nothing of the fact that they were only in the form of divine sense. Even if they had physical bodies and could hide in the Black Tower, So what? If a Empyrean moved, the Tower of Three Realms could only flee. If it resisted, it would definitely be destroyed. But was there really no other way? Shwa. Just at this moment, a flash of black light streaked past, blasting onto the claw, and forcibly repelling it. Who was this person that had actually blocked the attack of an Empyrean? The vertical eye blinked slightly, and looked behind Ling Han and the others. Following the flow of time, that was where the flash of black light had come from. So it's you. The vertical eye sneered. I've seen you in the flow of time. After countless years, you have already ceased to exist. Ling Han's group of 5 felt their scalps go numb when they heard this. Someone that could defy the flow of time and make a move had to be an Empyrean. But could an Empyrean also die? Ling Han suddenly understood. Which Empyrean would make a move at this time and then disappear into the annals of history? The heavenly venerate of origin birth. He had never seen his master before. The 5 of them all headed downstream and saw a figure stride over while stepping on the river water. A black tower hung above his head, and occasionally, a flash of golden light surged over, exuding an aura that could suppress the heavens and shake the ages. The Tower of Three Realms. Ling Han naturally recognized it, and was completely certain in his heart that this was the Heavenly Venerable Born Fate. The Heavenly Venerable Born Fate had entered this place in a different time, and discovered Ling Han, and also discovered that he would be his future disciple. Thus, when he encountered danger, he decisively made a move. So this little guy is your disciple from another lifetime. The vertical eye looked into the distance of the river of time, and showed a look of realization. I really can't underestimate your bloodline, actually producing 2 Empyreans in succession. However, the future is not unchangeable. As long as I kill him here today, the future will also be rewritten. Try it. The Heavenly Venerable Born Fate had already walked to the end of the river of time, and stood in front of Ling Han. His tall figure blocked Ling Han, and the others behind him. He looked proudly at the sky. 9-5 Empyrean, do you dare to fight? If I don't kill you, I will make you history. Domineering. So confident even in the face of an Empyrean. Ling Han poked his head out slightly, sizing up the Heavenly Venerable Born Fate. This was a very handsome man. He was tall, and his hair was jet black and thick. Each strand of his hair seemed to be carved out of fine jade, emitting a gentle light. His face also seemed to be carved out of jade, with distinct lines and smooth skin. The most shocking thing was naturally his aura, as if he was the sole ruler of the world. The vertical eye stared at the Heavenly Venerable Born Fate, and he couldn't help but sneer. You are already a dead man, so why should I risk being seriously injured and start a fight with you? Moreover, if I mess up time, I might change history, and you might obtain a chance to live. Hee hee. Do you think this Empyrean would be so foolish? Cowardly as a mouse, the Heavenly Venerable Born Fate only coldly mocked. The vertical eye couldn't help but widen slightly, and he said, But you are right. This Empyrean wants to kill these juniors. Their future is filled with mystery, and even this Empyrean cannot be sure. If I don't eradicate them, this Empyrean will feel uneasy. He wasn't interested in fighting with the Heavenly Venerable Born Fate, but he wanted to kill Ling Han and the others. Was it difficult? It wasn't difficult at all. If an Empyrean wanted to kill someone, even another Empyrean would find it very difficult to protect them. Chapter 22-24. He channeled his spirit, and there was a mysterious force around him. The origin power in his body surged, and the regulations of time turned into flames, tempering his heart. Though the source of time had left his body, it still had its own mark, exuding a faint mysterious force that worked together with the regulations of time that he had come into contact with to temper his heart. Ling Han's soul acted as a bridge, with the mystery realm of time on one side, and his physical body on the other. In this mystery realm, time was meaningless. An instant could be an eternity, but an eternity could also be an instant. In Ling Han's body, his heart was being refined by the regulations of time, developing in the direction of the mystery realm. This would form a space of its own that could hold objects and people, store power, nourish treasures, and when it reached the extreme, it would evolve into a world. Ling Han suddenly had a kind of understanding. No wonder there were so many mystery realms in the world. Most probably were not formed naturally, but were formed by the immortal palace mystery realms of elites. His first mystery realm was forming, and his power was also rising at a terrifying rate. After an unknown amount of time, the first mystery realm, his heart, was finally completely formed. Ling Han's body trembled violently, and a majestic power surged about to burst out. Xiao! His spirit suddenly moved, retreating madly in the direction it had come from. The effects of the Millennium Single Dream Pill had ended. Ugh! Ling Han let out a groan, and suddenly opened his eyes. He felt sweat pouring down like rain, and his whole body was about to collapse. His spirit was forcibly extracted from his physical body. This was not a joke. Oh! The Rain Emperor and the others woke up at the same time, holding their heads with their hands, appearing extremely uncomfortable. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and he couldn't help but shake his head, showing a look of disappointment. None of the Rain Emperor and the others had broken through to the Immortal Palace tier? True, this wasn't something that could be achieved in a single step. Ling Han, you broke through, Hunyo said excitedly. She could feel the terrifying power fluctuations on Ling Han's body, which far surpassed the level of a dividing soul tier. Ling Han nodded and said, I broke through. Haha, fourth brother is still the most outstanding. The Rain Emperor nodded, and did not conceal his praise for Ling Han. 5 people started at the same time, but only one person broke through. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Yet the Empress, Hunyo, and bewitching Maiden Ro did not feel the slightest bit of jealousy. In their eyes, they wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to immediately become a heavenly venerable. What did we experience in there? Bewitching Maiden Ro suddenly asked, her face filled with confusion. It was the same for Ling Han and the others. They had a vague feeling that they had experienced something incredible in the secret dimension of time. However, no matter how hard they tried, they could not recall what it was. It was as though there was a mysterious power that had forcibly erased their memories. What on earth happened? They racked their brains to think, but the results were limited. He vaguely remembered that they seemed to be advancing along a great river. It was the river of time, reflecting the past, present, and future. But now that he thought about it, he couldn't remember anything specific. Then there were plains and valleys where time was chaotic. There were pieces of time like crystals, deriving the past and the future. There should be something else in between, but he couldn't remember. Forget it. Let's not think about this problem for now. Ling Han stopped thinking about this matter. I'll go and face the heavenly tribulation first, and then refine the 1000 Autumns Dream Pill again. He exited the Black Tower. Suddenly, a dense mass of dark clouds surged over. There were flashes of lightning, and it was astonishingly terrifying. With a few strides, Ling Han had already exited the Saint Source Academy and arrived in an uninhabited forest to face the heavenly tribulation. His figure trembled, and suddenly, 9 figures fell out of his body. I have already severed my connection with you. From now on, you are all independent individuals, Ling Han said. These 9 figures were formed from 9 source powers of heaven and earth. We pay our respects to Master. The 9 of them knelt at the same time. Ling Han leaped up, and as he faced the heavenly tribulation he asked, Why do you address me as Master? You are broad-minded. You could obviously enslave us, yet did not do so. This makes us grateful. Secondly, you have lofty ambitions, and your opportunities are astonishing. We are also willing to follow you, and seek a better future. The 9 of them said in unison. The source powers of heaven and earth originally only had a weak intelligence, and only after countless years of evolution could they evolve into perfect intelligence. However, after fusing with Ling Han, they were also affected by Ling Han, and the development of their intelligence sped up countless times. Now they all possessed true intelligence, and were no different from humans. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said, All right, the foreign realm is about to attack, and I need enough people who are strong enough to help me resist the invasion of the foreign realm. You are all formed from the source powers of heaven and earth, and once your intelligence is developed, your cultivation speed will be incomparably shocking. Yes, Master. The 9 of them answered in unison again. Ling Han faced the heavenly tribulation casually. His battle prowess had long since reached the peak stage of fourth secret, and even if the heavenly tribulation he was facing now exceeded the height of first secret, it would at most be around second secret. How could it threaten him? Thus, he faced the heavenly tribulation casually while talking to the 9 of them. Do you have names? If it was something like 9 Heavens Flame, that didn't sound like a human name at all. Not yet. Please bestow us names, master, the 9 of them said again. Ling Han nodded and said, 9 Heavens Flame, you will be called Ling Hua, Shining Source Water. You will be called Ling Shui, Raging Flame Lightning Strike Wood. You will be called Ling Mu. He definitely didn't have the slightest bit of creativity when it came to naming, but the 9 of them didn't mind at all. Experts never used their names to declare their strength, but their strength. The lowest achievement of the source powers of heaven and earth was Immortal King, and they had all developed intelligence, so it was even more incredible. Not to mention the 9th heaven, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to reach the 8th heaven. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation dissipated, and Ling Han descended. He said, "Come, let's go back." He had been suppressing a bellyful of anger for a long time, and now that he had stepped into the immortal abode, the first thing he did was to go back and fight chaos. The 10 of them returned to the academy. Ling Hua and the others all passed through the gates of the academy as Ling Han's followers. When they entered the academy, they heard that chaos had already left 8 years ago. Not only chaos, even Ji Wuming, Jialan, Shichan Zi, and the others have left. Ling Han murmured. He seemed to have missed something in these years. An ascending origin tier elite appeared. He was a teacher in the academy, and he beckoned Ling Han over. "Han Lin, come with me." Ling Han nodded, walked over first, and then asked, "May I ask, Lord, what happened?" "I don't know the details either. This is Lord Eternal's command," that ascending origin tier elite said. Lord Eternal was the Eternal Celestial King. Ling Han naturally knew who the Eternal Celestial King was, and couldn't help but be surprised. He had actually been summoned by a 9th Heaven Celestial King. Under the lead of that ascending origin tier, he arrived at a small courtyard. After pushing the door open and entering, that ascending origin tier elite closed the door behind him and didn't follow him in. "Come sit." This small courtyard didn't use any spatial secret technique, so it really was a small courtyard. A white-robed man sat in the courtyard, his back facing Ling Han. He was currently brewing tea, and there was a 9-colored light wrapped around his body. 9th Heaven Celestial King. Chapter 22-25. Ling Han took a few steps forward, bowed and said, "Greetings, myriad ancient celestial king." No need for formalities. The myriad ancient celestial king turned around, but Ling Han was in nothingness. This person didn't seem to exist in this time and space at all. It was extremely strange. Seeing this, the myriad ancient celestial king smiled faintly and said, "This is just a thought of mine here. My true body is still fighting against the foreign realm, at the connecting point of the two realms." He paused, and then continued, "You don't need to ask so much, just listen to me. Now something has happened at the connecting point of the two realms. A neutral zone has actually appeared. Whether it's the celestial realm or the foreign race, no one can use the regulations of heaven and earth there, and can only rely on the power stored in their bodies and regulations to fight. Right now, this neutral zone still has cultivation level suppression, and those below the ascending origin tier can pass through. Those like Celestial King can only wait outside. A few days ago, the foreign realm provoked and wanted the younger generation of both sides to fight. Us old guys thought about it and felt that we should also let this generation of youngsters train and let them know how powerful and terrifying the foreign realm is, so we agreed. Your methods are not bad. I couldn't find you these days, but forget it. Everyone has their own secrets, and I don't intend to pursue it. Since you've come out of seclusion and broken through to the Immortal Palace tier, go there and help the celestial realm." If Ling Han didn't know about the tide of darkness before, he would definitely be confused now. But now he clearly knew what the myriad ancient celestial king was talking about, and also knew that the war between the two realms had changed again. A neutral zone had actually appeared at the connecting point. If this zone continued to expand and allowed even more powerful people to enter, then wouldn't the celestial realm be in trouble? Ling Han thought, and hurriedly said, "This junior is willing to do his part for the celestial realm. Okay, go." The myriad ancient celestial king waved his hand. Your identity token can open the teleportation formation, and now the only teleportation point is near the connecting point of the two realms. Hee, you already know about the tide of darkness. Yes, this junior knows, Ling Han said with a bow. The 10,000 ancient immortal king nodded and looked at Ling Han. You really have great willpower, kid. You actually gave up on the 9 Taoists of heaven and earth. If it had been me back then, would I have had such courage? His mind was slightly absent-minded, and it was obvious that he couldn't make a decision at the moment. One must know that immortal kings were incomparably decisive. But now they were actually hesitating. From this, it could be seen how decisive it was for Ling Han to be willing to give up the 9 source energies of the heaven and earth. Ha 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 ha. The 10,000 ancient immortal king suddenly burst into laughter as his eyes lit up. The fact that I've hesitated for so long already speaks volumes. Young man, I love you very much. Come to the point where the two worlds connect. I want to see you with my own eyes and help you improve your cultivation. Who knows, you might even be able to create a future for yourself. Go. Ling Han bowed in greeting, then left the room. He thought for a moment. In any case, the Rain Emperor and the others were heading to the time mystery realm with their divine sense, so it didn't matter where they went. Thus he didn't return, and directly brought Ling Hua and the others to the teleportation gate. After showing their identity talismans, the 11 of them entered the teleportation gate. A mysterious and mighty force swept over them, and they arrived at a new place. This was a wasteland. There were corpses everywhere, but they were in strange shapes, and they were still burning with flames. Ling Han had to look carefully. Those were not the regulations of fire, but the flames of the Tao. When humans died, their Tao disappeared, but some beings were too powerful. Although the gods died, their bodies remained. However, the heaven and earth didn't allow beings that were too powerful to interfere with the world, and would use supreme flames of the Tao to burn the corpses of such elites to ashes. This was precisely the case now. The heaven and earth were refining the remains of such elites. These are the corpses of elites from the other realm. Beside the teleportation gate, an old man sat. His face was full of wrinkles, and his appearance was unremarkable. He didn't have the slightest bit of a powerful aura. Ling Han glanced at him, yet an endless chill suddenly rose up in his heart. He felt that this old man only needed a thought to turn him into nothingness. Young man, your destination is the fortress at the end of the wasteland, the old man said. We built a fortress at the end of the celestial realm, and set up a super formation to resist the invasion of the other realm. But occasionally, there will still be powerful beings sneaking over, and this wasteland has become the second battlefield. Ling Han could only nod. This old man was definitely a celestial king, and most likely a high-level celestial king. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the right to oversee this place. He would be easily killed. He looked around curiously. This was the second battlefield of the war between the celestial realm and the other realm, as well as the last line of defense. Once the other realm broke through here, they would be able to march straight in and enter the vast celestial realm. Clearly, this line of defense wasn't as stable as Mount Tai, because a large part of the celestial realm had already been corroded by the other realm. This was understandable. One could only be a thief for 1,000 days, but how could one guard against thieves for 1,000 days? Senior, we will leave first. Ling Han cupped his hands and bowed to the old man. Then he strode forward and began to cross the wasteland. After stepping into the wasteland, Ling Han immediately discovered that there was a terrifying aura surging towards him. It turned into a sinister evil spirit that wanted to corrode his soul. His mind was unmoved, and he only strode forward. Since the old man allowed him to cross, it meant that there was definitely no danger here. As expected, these evil spirits could only come before him, and couldn't take a step further. It was as if there was an invisible barrier protecting Ling Han. Ling Hua and the other 8 were the same. They were formed from the source of heaven and earth, and had experienced countless years. They naturally wouldn't be easily frightened. There were corpses everywhere in the wasteland. Because this was the rear of the celestial realm, there naturally weren't any corpses of the celestial realm experts here. They had definitely been properly dealt with. The remains of the other realms experts were all here, and they were basically divided into two types. One was humanoid, but had a pair of hoof-like feet, a pair of horns on their heads, and a tail behind them. The other was the shape of an insect, with 6 legs and 2 wings. There were barbs on the feet, and they emitted a cold light. These two forms were very familiar. Ling Han had once seen the so-called immortal spirits on the island. They were humanoid beings with long horns and tails. And in a mystic realm, he had also seen the broken limbs of an Empyrean from a foreign land. They were insect legs with barbs. He had a conjecture in his heart. This horned and tailed humanoid was the foreign realm's corresponding human, while the insect form should be the corresponding ferocious beast. Sure enough, they were two completely different worlds. Ling Han sighed as he strode forward. There was no danger in the wasteland. Although there were many corpses of foreign experts, they were being burned by the Tao fire of heaven and earth. They were no longer ferocious, and could not pose any threat to Ling Han and the others. It was just that walking like this was extremely stressful, making their foreheads sweat, and it was difficult for them to walk. After about 3 months, a majestic city finally appeared in front of them. The cities of the immortal domain were all as large as stars, and this one was even more outstanding, indescribably large. Moreover, the entire city floated in the air, countless streaks of starlight cascading down, appearing extremely beautiful. This was the first line of confrontation between immortal domain and the other side. Chapter 22-26. This was no ordinary city, but rather a fortress. The city walls were covered in formation patterns, and exuded a powerful aura of danger. It was even more supreme, as if it were a celestial king of the 9th heaven. No, not 1 but 10 dozens of them standing guard together, incredibly terrifying. Ling Han nodded internally. If not for this, how could they suppress the frenzied bombardment of the foreign realm? This was a fortress, and there were no entrances on either side, causing Ling Han to be slightly dumbfounded and not know what to do. Just at this moment, he saw a man stride towards him. He only had a beast's skin draped over his body, and his figure was tall and burly. There was actually a star on his shoulder, and though it was only the size of a fist, it exuded a powerful aura. "Where did you come from?" this man asked. He looked to be in his 30s, and the exposed parts of the beast's skin were covered in scars. Ling Han was slightly surprised, because this man's cultivation level was at the Immortal Palace tier, and had even reached the level of 3 secrets. For Celestials, even if they lost an arm or a leg, that injury could be instantly healed. So how could there be so many scars? There was only one reason, and that was that there was still a kind of foreign martial art intent left in the scars, and this affected his recovery. This was a fortress, the front line against the foreign realm, and it was obvious that the scars on his body were left by foreign cultivators. Ling Han was very respectful towards the people in the fortress. They fought on the front lines, and not many people in the celestial realm knew of their existence, let alone being grateful. But now this man's attitude caused Ling Han to be slightly displeased. This was a question filled with disdain. Ling Han suppressed his displeasure. On account that this man had once shed blood and risked his life for the celestial realm, he calmly replied, "St. Source Academy." "St. Source Academy?" That middle-aged man faltered slightly, and then showed a look of disdain, saying, "The students of St. Source Academy have already arrived 8 years ago. Though there are some who have arrived late, they have not exceeded the limit of 2 years. He glanced at Ling Han, and the disdain on his face became even stronger. "You must be a coward, and only arrived now. Hee, you probably have some powerful figure behind you, right? However, this is the general trend. If you want to come, then come. Even if you don't want to, you have to come." Ling Han was slightly surprised. This guy really knew how to make connections. How did he make such a speculation? He smiled faintly and said, I'm here to report on the orders of the immortal king. Let me enter the city first. How do I know if you're an outsider in disguise? The middle-aged man said coldly, a cold smile on his face. Are you purposely making things difficult for me? Ling Hua loudly said. He was formed from the origin of fire, and his temper was exceptionally explosive. He was the first to be unable to endure it. The middle-aged man glanced at him and sneered. Do you think that just anyone is qualified to enter the Heavens Pass? Fine. In his eyes, Ling Han and the others were just cats and dogs. He felt that Ling Han and the others came too late, and that they must be cowards who were afraid of death. Naturally, he had a strong sense of disdain. When we were shedding blood for the celestial realm, what were you all doing? The middle-aged man arrogantly swept his gaze over Ling Han and the others. Your lives were exchanged by the lives of our ancestors, generation after generation. You still dare to argue with me? Who do you think you are? He looked like he wanted to spit on Ling Han and the others' faces. Ling Han finally understood that this guy was actually feeling unbalanced. From his words, he had been born in this stronghold, and had never seen the prosperity of the immortal region. If it was just that, it wouldn't have mattered much. He had grown up surrounded by swords and blades, and he was used to killing. However, this time, a large number of students from St. Source Academy came here, and it also let these bitter children, who grew up in the stronghold, know that there was a colorful world outside. Naturally, it was to be expected that some people would feel indignant and unjust. They really could not understand why generations of them had to guard this bitter place, bleed, shed tears, and arrange funerals for the people around them every day. With such a mentality, the middle-aged man discovered that Ling Han and the others were cowards, and his negative emotions naturally erupted. Understanding this, Ling Han felt pity for this guy, and did not get angry. Instead, he patted Ling Hua's shoulder and said, Haha, we also hope to do our part for the immortal region. Quickly arrange for us to enter the city. You. The middle-aged man sneered. Apologies, the Heavens Pass fortress does not welcome cowards. I know that people like you came here to get some experience and merits, but you came to the wrong place. Ling Han's face darkened slightly. Don't insult us, we came late for a reason. Even the immortal king did not blame us. What right do you have to complain here? Showing your true colors, huh? The middle-aged man sneered. You're angry because I poked your weak point. Don't use the immortal king or whatever to suppress me. I'm fighting here, and I'm not even afraid of the foreigners. How can you scare me? Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This person was really too good at getting into a dead end. After determining that they were cowards who were afraid of death, he refused to let them go. He shook his head. If you continue to talk like this, I won't be polite anymore. Ha, you still want to fight me? The middle-aged man sneered. You little flowers that grew up in a greenhouse. How would you know the cruelty of war? I fight with the foreigners every day, honing my strength. Even if our realms are the same, I can still suppress all of you with a single hand. He sneered. The aura that Ling Han and the others exuded was only at first secret. Their realms were far weaker than his. Get out of the Heavens Completion Pass. This isn't a place where you can act as you please. He suddenly lashed out. Boom! Multiple patterns instantly appeared on his right hand, which buzzed as he grabbed at Ling Han and the others. Ling Han was slightly surprised, because this person clearly did not have the talent of a king tier. But the attack he released was close to the level of a king tier. This was very inconceivable. Could it be that coming into contact with death every day would cause one to change? Ling Hua roared. He could not hold it in anymore, but he had been suppressed by Ling Han, so he did not explode. Now that he saw the middle-aged man attack, he naturally rushed out, punching out. Hong! His whole body turned into flames. Of course, the nine heavens flame was domineering. Pung! The two of them clashed, their bodies trembling at the same time. The shockwaves formed from the collision, rippling endlessly. The middle-aged man's expression changed, and he said, Monarch. The other party was only a first secret, but could not be at a disadvantage against him. A third secret. How could he not be a monarch? However, the disdain on his face deepened. A grand monarch was so afraid of death. It was truly a disgrace. So what if you're a monarch? In Heaven's Pass, even monarchs have to crawl. He attacked brazenly, his hands trembling, the veins on his body bulging, turning into vigorous dragons, supporting his battle prowess. Get down! He punched out with both fists, suppressing Ling Hua. Chapter 22-28. 19 people attacked at the same time. Although their cultivation levels varied, the weakest was second secret, and most were third secret. With so many people attacking at the same time, the power was naturally earth-shattering. However, Ling Hua and the other 8 crossed their arms in front of their chests, appearing completely unconcerned. They had seen Ling Han attack many times. Suppressing third secret kings was naturally child's play to him. Now that Ling Han had advanced to first secret, even fifth secret kings could only barely match him. However, Li Hongfei and the others did not know that Ling Han was so powerful. When they saw that Ling Han was indeed going to face them alone, they could not help but sneer, overestimating themselves. Hong, large hands pressed down one after another, as if stars were falling one after another, incomparably terrifying. Ling Han smiled faintly and casually swept out. Pung pung pung. The 19 people were immediately sent flying, all of them vomiting blood wildly. He had already shown mercy. Otherwise, he could have instantly killed all 19 of them. Li Hongfei and the other 8 turned pale with fright. A mere first secret could actually instantly defeat all 19 of them. What kind of concept was this? Monarch. Monarch cultivators could only be invincible 2 levels above them, equivalent to third secret kings. However, there were as many as 10 such cultivators among them. They should not have been defeated by a single move from Ling Han. Above Monarch, Li Hongfei said in a trembling voice. His body was also trembling. Such an existence was known as the Emperor Star in Heaven's Pass. He stood high above the 9 heavens, and other monarch cultivators could only look up to him. Emperor Star. Ding Li also said, his face full of disbelief. This coward in his eyes was actually the Emperor Star, a supreme overlord who would definitely become a 9th heaven celestial king in the future. They looked at each other, then bowed and half-knelt on the ground. Greetings, my lord. The people in Heaven's Pass were all very practical. The Emperor Star would definitely become a 9th heaven celestial king. This was the strongest force in Heaven's Pass, and also the pillar to resist the other realms. They would be heavily nurtured. Hence, Ding Li and the others immediately knelt and submitted. Ling Han was also stunned. He had seen all kinds of people, but people like them were really rare. He nodded and said, "Rise." Only then did Li Hongfei and the others stand up. One of them said, "My lord, please enter." Everyone set off together, but they did not fly up to the impregnable pass in the sky. Instead, they arrived at the base of the impregnable pass, only to see that the ground was engraved with formation patterns. Clearly, it had been a long time, and some of the marks were already modeled. They stood on the array pattern, and after Deng Fei said a few more words with the horn, a brilliance rolled out and wrapped them all in it. In another flash, they had appeared in the big city in the sky. The Heavens Pass was a place that all foreign invaders had to pass through. It was incomparably majestic, and when they appeared within it, they immediately felt an iron-blooded murderous and ancient aura assaulting them. Even the most cowardly person would be infected by the aura here, bursting forth with a tough side. "Please come with us." Li Hongfei and the others continued to lead the way, leading Ling Han's group forward. In other places of the celestial realm, every city was as large as a planet. Thus, there were actually mountains and rivers, and then there were towns that were densely dotted with stars. But here, there were no mountains or rivers, and only buildings made of stone, filled with a primitive aura. From time to time, they could see the corpses of foreign elites that were suppressed in the formation, and the energy extracted from them was supplied to the defense system of the whole big city. They advanced for a whole half a day before arriving in front of a stone barracks. Then, Li Hongfei led Ling Han's group in, and paid respects to the person in charge of this place. It was a one-eyed man, his left eye covered by a black cloth. His black hair was loose, and his upper body was bare. His muscles bulged as if they were made of stone. Ascending origin tier, Ling Han thought. He had cultivated the heaven-deceiving technique and was very sensitive to auras. However, because the gap in cultivation level was too wide, he could not determine the specific cultivation level of the other. New disciples from the Saint Source Academy? The one-eyed man asked. Yes. Ling Han nodded, and then turned around to point at Ling Hua and the others. They are all my followers. The one-eyed man was slightly surprised because he could sense the strength of Ling Hua and the others. Conversely, Ling Han was ordinary. This was naturally because of the heaven-deceiving technique. He was not too curious and said, "You will all be under my command. We are the 17th Battalion of the 4th Battalion. I am your commanding officer called Nyehashan. You all go and settle down first, and I will slowly assign you tasks." Ling Han nodded and said, "My lord, we will take our leave first." They left Nyehashan's stone house, and Li Hongfei came over again, saying, "My lord, I have come to arrange your accommodations." "Tell me about the recent situation," Ling Han asked. Yes. Li Hongfei began to talk about the major events that had happened in the past few years. Just as the 10,000 ancient celestial king had said, the foreign realm had issued a challenge to the celestial realm and wanted the younger generation to compete. However, in these few years, only severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier prodigies had participated in the bloody battles, and no one had reached the immortal palace tier yet. And judging from the current situation, the situation of the celestial realm was really terrible. That was because the younger generation of the celestial realm and the foreign realm had fought 17 battles, and they had lost every single one. The prodigies of the foreign realm were too strong. From the severing mundane tier to the dividing soul tier, there were elites that surpassed monarch tiers at every level, especially the dividing soul tier. There was no lack of elites that had formed the 5th, 6th, or even 7th soul. Although they might never be able to form the 9th soul, their strength was much stronger than the monarch tiers that had formed the 4th soul. This was an absolute suppression, and it was also because of such consecutive defeats that the celestial realm did not dare to easily agree to start an immortal palace tier-level struggle with the foreign realm. Why? Because although the celestial realm had emperor stars like Ji Wuming and Jialan, the cultivation level of these 4 great emperor stars was too low. As long as the foreign realm also had such emperor stars, then as long as they reached the 2nd or 3rd secret, they would definitely be able to suppress Ji Wuming and the others. Thus, they did not dare to rashly agree to battle with the foreign realm again, fearing that they would suffer another complete defeat. If that happened, the morale of the celestial realm cultivators would fall to rock bottom. The celestial realm would definitely start another war with the foreign realm and pull back the already very low morale, but definitely not now. At least, they had to wait until Ji Wuming and the others had reached the 5th secret. Thus, recently, the monarch tiers had all been sent into the most dangerous places to cultivate in the midst of bloody battles, so that they could raise their cultivation level as quickly as possible. Of course, the cultivation resources that they had obtained were also insanely abundant, and all kinds of natural treasures were being poured into their bodies. This was also one of the reasons why Li Hongfei and the others viewed Ling Han with hatred. They felt that they reaped without sowing, and that it was unfair to the people of the Heavens Pass. On the other hand, it was also because the connection point between the two realms was becoming more and more stable. Perhaps after a while, even heavenly venerable tier-level power would be able to pass through, and at that time, it would no longer be a small skirmish like this, but an all-out war. Thus, the current generation had to grow up as quickly as possible. After Ling Han settled down, he immediately entered into the Black Tower to concoct alchemical pills, so that the Empress and the others could break through to the Immortal Palace realm as soon as possible. Only a day had passed in the outside world, and Ling Han had already concocted enough Millennium Single Dream pills, which were enough for them to enter the Time Mystery realm a few more times. Chapter 22-29. Ling Han cultivated in the Black Tower, while the Empress and the others continued to take Millennium Dream pills to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. There was no concept of time in the Time Mystery realm, and time was accelerated 100,000 times in the Black Tower. Thus, only a day had passed in the outside world, but the Empress and the others could break through to the Immortal Palace tier countless times. The prerequisite was that they had enough Millennium Dream Pills. 3 days later, Wuxia was the first to break through, and then after a short while the Empress also broke through, and then after another day, the Rain Emperor also successfully broke through. The Rain Emperor was slow, because it was obviously more difficult for a 9-dividing soul to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. Another 2 days later, Bewitching Maiden Ro finally broke through to the Immortal Palace tier. At this time, Niahashan also issued an order, and the entire 17th Battalion moved out to enter the neutral zone for training. In this neutral zone, the regulations of the two realms collided fiercely, tearing the earth apart, overturning the universe and creating many monsters. Not belonging to the celestial realm, not belonging to the foreign realm, independent of the world. The Rain Emperor and the others also went to report, and were all included into the 17th Battalion of the 4th Battalion, under the command of Niahashan. In this battalion, besides the outstanding students of the St. Source Academy, there were also the younger generation of the natives of Heaven's Pass, forming such a team. There were many such teams, to quickly increase everyone's cultivation through cruel battles. The 17th Battalion had a total of 240 people, divided into teams of 10 to 12 people, and each team had a captain. Because Ling Han and the others had arrived late, they were separated into these 20 small teams, and were not together. Though they had also requested to be separated, Niahashan did not agree, so they could only temporarily leave things as they were. Under Niahashan's lead, they left the Heaven's Pass, and entered the neutral zone. After walking for half a day, Niahashan allowed the 20 teams to move freely under the leadership of their captain. The captain of Ling Han's team was called Xin Chao, a native of Heaven's Pass. His cultivation had reached the 5th secret of the Immortal Palace tier, and he was also a monarch tier, very extraordinary. Although Heaven's Pass was like a barren land with harsh conditions, the cruel environment nurtured countless geniuses. Xin Chao was only one of them, and couldn't be considered the top level. Just like Li Hongfei and the others, Xin Chao did not have a good impression of the disciples of Saint Origin Academy. His gaze was filled with intense disdain, as he looked at the 5 Saint Origin Academy disciples in the group. Young Master Han. The 4 students of the Saint Source Academy naturally recognized Ling Han, and they all greeted him. The 4 of them were all at the dividing soul tier. Heaven Soul, Earth Soul, Yin Soul, and Yang Soul happened to have one at each tier. It was probably specially arranged this way. Ling Han nodded and looked around. They had already entered a valley. On one side of the mountain wall, there was a fissure that was about 3 feet wide. If one looked into it, it would be unfathomably deep, with no end in sight. If he were to send his soul into it, it would be like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing in an instant. This space was distorted and destroyed. Moreover, it was not a normal void. It was formed by the collision of 2 worlds. No one knew what was going on inside. Perhaps only celestial kings could enter to explore. But this place was suppressed by the heaven and earth of the 2 realms. Even ascending origin tiers could not enter, let alone celestial kings. If they forced their way in, they would only cause their bodies to shatter. This region had not appeared for long. What Ling Han and the others wanted to do was first to train, and second to draw a map of this place. In the future, this would be a great battlefield where the 2 realms fought. They had to understand the situation here clearly. Of course, someone must have already investigated the situation here, and confirmed the danger level of this place. Otherwise, they would not have been allowed to enter rashly. Xin Chao divided them into 4 groups, with 2 to 3 people in each group. Then, he had them move separately to observe the terrain and draw a map. There were 3 people in Ling Han's group. Aside from him, the other 2 were students of Saint Source Academy. One was called Lu Zhen, and the other was called Mei Hua. They were Yin Soul and Earth Soul respectively, so he was naturally the leader. They were assigned to the west side of the valley. The environment here was very bad. The road was extremely rugged, and filled with sharp rocks that were like sharp swords that could easily tear through the soles of their feet. Because there were no regulations of the celestial realm here, they naturally could not fly. Forcibly flying was not impossible, but it would exhaust the regulations that had been locked in their bodies. Who knew what dangers there were here? Once they exhausted their regulations, their power would fall to the Genesis tier. However, Ling Han did not have such concerns. This was because he had the Black Tower. Even if the Black Tower was a heavenly venerable tier precious treasure, it could not generate regulations. However, it could absorb a large amount of regulations and store them. Moreover, it was far more regulations than Ling Han could lock in his body. If one had to forcibly compare, it was equivalent to the amount of regulations locked in by one or several ninth heaven celestial kings. This meant that Ling Han could use regulations without restraint. No matter how extravagant an immortal palace tier was, how long would it take to exhaust a ninth heaven celestial king? This was practically impossible. He naturally would not say this. This was his trump card. In the future, if anyone wanted to exhaust his power by taking turns to fight him, it would be a waste of effort. Instead, it would allow him to find a loophole, and he would be able to win with a single strike. They all used regulations to protect themselves. Their bodies floated up slightly to avoid the damage from the sharp rocks, so they did not expend much of their regulations. Wang, a strangely shaped creature, suddenly appeared. Its upper body was that of a human, but its lower body was that of a ferocious tiger. Its entire body exuded a glazed luster that could absorb light, and possessed an extremely powerful concealment ability. Thus, when it appeared, Ling Han and the others were slightly taken by surprise. It pounced, attacking Ling Han and the others. Its hands danced and boom, a powerful shockwave swept out. It was not that there were no regulations here, but that cultivators of the two realms could not use them. However, the living beings born here were not subject to this restriction. With a single strike, thousands of afterimages appeared. Lu Jun shouted softly, and took the initiative to meet it. Pung pung pung. They immediately engaged in a fierce battle. At first, Ling Han was indifferent. This living being only had battle prowess on the level of Earth Soul. But he soon became interested. This was because the regulations that this living being used were extremely strange. After the collision of the two realms that did not belong to the celestial realm, but also not the foreign realm, the two kinds of regulations also clashed, resulting in a huge change. It could be said that this was a small realm that was independent of the celestial realm and the foreign realm. However, the level of the regulations here was too low, and suppressed the cultivation level of the living beings here. For example, only immortal palace tier cultivators could enter this realm, which meant that the upper limit of the regulations here was only immortal palace tier. However, this realm had just been formed, and there was still a lot of room for the regulations to grow. The upper limit could still be increased, and perhaps it could reach ascending origin tier level, or even celestial king level. Interesting, he thought. A thought rose up in his mind. If he could comprehend the regulations here, did that mean that he would also be able to comprehend the regulations of the foreign realm after entering into the foreign realm? This place was formed from the collision of two realms, and the regulations were also the same. There was both the celestial realm and the foreign realm. If Ling Han could not even comprehend the regulations here, how could he comprehend the regulations of the foreign realm? Chapter 2230. Lu Jun and the strange creature fought fiercely, and it was hard to tell who would win. Because this area had only recently been born, a special living creature had formed here, and possessed a unique set of regulations. Thus, Ling Han could not determine whether this living creature was also an earthly soul emperor tier, a heavenly soul king tier, or something else. His understanding of this region and the new life forms in this region was zero. However, Ling Han was certain that since Lu Jun could not win in a short period of time, he definitely could not win. The reason was simple. The rules stored in his body would quickly be used up. When that happened, his battle strength would plummet, and he would be easily killed by this creature. Though Lu Jun was also aware of this, he did not panic. This was because he had Ling Han supporting him from behind. If he was no match for his opponent, Ling Han would only need to make a move to instantly suppress his opponent. For a while, Ling Han did not plan to attack. He was trying to figure out the unique rules of this place. Directly comprehending them was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It was as if he wanted to enter another system of martial art. Without a guide, this was almost impossible. Just the rules in his body would repel him endlessly. However, if this creature attacked, he could use it as a reference for Ling Han. He had a sliver of hope that he could grasp the rules of this place from this creature's attack. However, after the 4th hour of the battle, Lu Jun suddenly fell into a state of exhaustion. He could not suppress that creature, and the rules in his body were almost used up. This caused him to fall into a predicament. Although he knew that his life would not be in danger, his expression was ugly. As an emperor, he was naturally arrogant and thought that there was no opponent he could not suppress. Now that this was the case, he was embarrassed. Ling Han still didn't make a move. For cultivators, the experience between life and death was extremely important. It could better stimulate one's potential. Of course, Lu Jun knew that Ling Han would definitely make a move, so he couldn't possibly force out all of Ling Han's potential. This was not important. In any case, Ling Han had no intention of nurturing this person. However, he was willing to give him a chance, because they were both from the immortal region. After fighting for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Lu Jun was in a perilous situation. His body was bleeding profusely, but he still wanted to save face, so he did not ask for help from Ling Han. However, his situation was getting worse and worse. The creature suddenly turned its hand into a sword and stabbed at his head. This strike was fast and ruthless. There were strange runes flashing on Lu Jun's arm. If Lu Jun was hit, he would probably die in his current state. Ling Han was slightly surprised. From the start of the battle until now, this creature's combat strength had actually been increasing, but the increase was very small. However, with his eyesight, he could clearly tell that this creature originally had no combat experience, but now, it was gradually comprehending it. It could be said that this area was still in the state of the beginning of the world. Therefore, the living creatures were extremely primitive, and martial art had just begun to develop. Every living creature had a lot of room for growth. As he thought this, Ling Han reached out casually and grabbed that creature with a single move. Then he threw it onto the ground. Pung! A bottomless pit was formed in the ground, and that creature had completely disappeared. Ling Han, however, was slightly speechless. If he had thrown it anywhere else, there would have been a huge explosion in the surrounding 100 kilometers, and everything would have sunk. However, there was only a small pit here. It was enough to show how stable the structure of the world was. He reached out again, and as his origin power surged, he pulled the creature out from the ground. "Huh! Lu Jun!" and Mei Hua both cried out in surprise. Although this creature's limbs were drooping, there was not a single wound on it. It had to be known that it had been viciously thrown by a secret emperor. Ling Han reached out and tore off the creature's skin. It bounced back, showing its astonishing elasticity. This defense is a bit shocking. He nodded. No wonder I couldn't hurt it at all even after hitting it so many times. Lu Jun sucked in a cold breath. Previously, he had indeed had a slight advantage, and had hit that creature many times, but he still couldn't hurt it. Ling Han murmured, and said, "When the world was first formed, the first batch of creatures born were called source beasts. Their battle prowess was far stronger than the creatures born later." "Young Master Han, are you saying that this is also a newly formed world?" Lu Jun and Mei Hua both cried out in surprise. They only knew that this was a region formed by the collision of two realms, but they had never thought of anything else. Ling Han nodded. The power of heaven and earth was the strongest, and could suppress heavenly venerables. Thus, the heavenly venerables of the other realms couldn't enter, and could only wait for the connection point between the two realms to stabilize before launching the most powerful attacks. Regulations were only a subsidiary of heaven and earth. This was like a newly formed world, and would definitely give birth to a batch of powerful creatures that belonged to this heaven and earth. However, this heaven and earth was still too young, and the regulations were limited to immortal palace tier. Thus, the strongest creatures should only be the elites of immortal palace tier. There was nothing that could be done. This heaven and earth was only formed by the collision of two original worlds. Strictly speaking, this was only a region, and not the true heaven and earth. Ling Han stretched out a hand and pressed it on the head of that creature, trying to read its memories. Wu! He suddenly retreated, blood flowing out of his nose and eyes. He felt his heart beating incredibly violently, as if it was about to explode. He couldn't help but be shocked. One had to know that he had cultivated his heart into the first mystery realm of the human body. He had activated the regulations of time, and this was still almost exploding. One could imagine how dangerous it was. Young Master Han. Lu Zhen and Mei Hua hurriedly rushed over to support Ling Han. Ling Han stood still, waved his hand, and said, "I'm fine, but you guys definitely shouldn't try to extract the memories of this creature. It's very dangerous." Lu Zhen and Mei Hua both nodded. Even Ling Han was in such a tragic state, so if they tried to do so, they would definitely be sending themselves to their deaths. Ling Han wiped the blood off his face. Unwilling to give up, he stretched out his hand and pressed it down again. Hong, a terrifying aura surged over. It was filled with primal chaos, as if it could swallow everything. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven's scroll, resisting it. Wang! Streaks of golden light appeared on his body, turning into ancient symbols that could not be tolerated in heaven and earth. This was because after Lu Zhen and Mei Hua tried to imprint on them, they felt their vision go black. Their minds were empty, and they could not imprint anything. This was the true explanation of the great Tao that surpassed regulations, and could be seen as another kind of regulations. They naturally couldn't understand it. Without the Black Tower, Ling Han couldn't possibly cultivate the indestructible heaven's scroll unless he reached the celestial venerable tier. If he turned back and started cultivating again, what meaning would there be? The aura of primal chaos wanted to swallow Ling Han's soul, or assimilate him, and drag him into the endless darkness. Understanding rose in Ling Han's heart. This was the fusion of the regulations of the two realms, so the creatures here couldn't help but carry the aura of the foreign realm, and were filled with killing intent. He tried to decipher the regulations, but found that it was futile. These regulations were all fragments, and couldn't be understood at all. They could only be naturally formed by heaven and earth. It couldn't be helped. This wasn't a true large world, and was only a small area formed by the collision of two worlds and two kinds of regulations. However, through these fragments of regulations, he managed to catch a glimpse of some of the regulations of the foreign realm. Chapter 2232. Shen Chao was really very strong. Every casual move he made was a killing move with astonishing power. A 5-secret Tharch was really too strong. If Ling Han chose to fight Shen Chao head-on, he would probably be heavily injured or killed in 2 or 3 moves. However, he had once possessed 9 source powers, and the first immortal mansion mystic realm that he had cultivated was tempered by the power of time. This also made his battle prowess far exceed his cultivation level. At least in terms of dodging and escaping, he was really strong enough to make one's hair stand on end. The void spirit space spread out, and he had countless clones. Even if Shen Chao used a large-scale killing technique and destroyed the entire void spirit space, he still had the laws of time. He slowed down the attacks coming at him by 10,000 times, and then calmly escaped. Even Shen Chao could not help but admire Ling Han's strength, but this only made his arrogance more intense. He attacked again and again, determined to take down Ling Han. "I didn't expect you to be the Emperor Star," he said. "However, as the Emperor Star, you only came now. There is no right or wrong in your eyes. So what if you become a 9th Heaven Celestial King? You will only surrender when you encounter danger." His expression was cold. "Rather than let you harm the celestial region, I might as well kill you now." He was full of killing intent, and his attacks were even more vicious. This time, he was really going to take Ling Han's life. Ling Han's expression was cold. Perhaps Shen Chao's intentions were really for the celestial region. But what did this have to do with him? "If you want to kill me, should I just smile?" He only used the laws of space and time to fight with Shen Chao. The laws of space were already mysterious enough, and the laws of time were above all other laws. It was very easy to use. It could slow down, accelerate the flow of time in a small area, and even freeze time. Although it only had 3 functions, it was too powerful in battle. If it could work on everything, then Ling Han could even kill celestial kings. Xin Chao also began to expend as much energy as he could. In any case, his realm was higher than Ling Han's, so the laws locked in his body would definitely be more than Ling Han's. Therefore, as long as he expended his energy slightly faster than Ling Han, it would definitely be Ling Han who would exhaust his laws first. It was normal for him to think this way, but he could never have imagined that Ling Han had a treasure like the Black Tower, and that the power of regulations was endless. The two of them fought fiercely, but it seemed like Xin Chao was suppressing Ling Han, while Ling Han was constantly dodging. As time passed, more and more people returned. When they saw that Ling Han and Xin Chao were fighting, they stopped to watch and ask about the situation. Lu Zhen and Mei Hua recounted what had happened, and the natives all looked disdainful. They thought that Ling Han really needed to be taught a lesson. Meanwhile, the other 2 students of the Saint Source Academy were secretly cheering for Ling Han. Because they were alone, they did not dare to make any noise. However, the situation could not be more obvious. How could a Secret 1 compare to Secret 5? Not to mention that Secret 5 was a monarch tier. If it was not for the fact that the regulations could not be supplemented here, which affected Xin Chao's performance, he would have already won. Even so, Ling Han was continuously injured. His celestial blood flew everywhere, hitting the mountain rocks and blasting the rocks into pieces. This was of course Ling Han deliberately. If he did not give Xin Chao some benefits, how could the latter continue fighting? Another hour passed, and everyone had returned to the starting point, where Ling Han and Xin Chao's fierce battle was taking place. At this time, Xin Chao was also a little anxious. They had already fought for so long, yet he still hadn't managed to defeat Ling Han, nor had he managed to exhaust all of Ling Han's power. Although Ling Han was riddled with wounds, and looked as if he could collapse under the next attack at any moment, he would always miraculously survive. Instead, the regulations in his body became fewer and fewer. Although he had formed 5 body mystery realms, and could lock an astonishing number of regulations, there would definitely be an end, if he could only leave and not enter. He was now almost at this end. Boundless heaven and earth Tiangang strike, he roared loudly, and after accumulating power for a long time, he blasted out a powerful move. Instantly, the sky was filled with multiple golden sharp swords formed from origin power, entwined with the regulations of metal, and swept towards Ling Han. The area covered by this strike was extraordinarily large, enveloping the entire void spirit space that Ling Han had opened, and Xin Chao did not hesitate to add a large amount of regulations of metal, intending to break the blockade of Ling Han's regulations of time, and deliver a domineering strike. Ling Han snickered, and actively channeled the indestructible heavens scroll. Xiao xiao xiao, endless golden swords descended, almost filling the whole valley. Everyone was greatly shocked. With this strike, could Ling Han still be alive? The regulations here were incompatible with the celestial realm. Thus, the golden swords formed by regulations quickly disintegrated and disappeared, but there was still dust rising in the field, and shattered rocks flying. The power of this strike was really too strong. However, when the dust settled, everyone revealed a look of astonishment. That was because Ling Han was still standing, and though there was blood on his body, the aura exuding from his whole body was incredibly domineering, and there was also endless fury boiling. A strange feeling rose in everyone's heart, making them all want to kneel down and worship Ling Han. Ling Han opened his eyes. There was blood at the corner of his eyes, but it did not affect his domineering aura in the slightest. Instead, it made his gaze even sharper and colder. He looked at Xin Chao, his fighting spirit turning into a song, resounding loudly. Even if Xin Chao was a monarch tier, so what? Facing such a Ling Han, his heart began to feel cold. What was even more fatal was that he did not have much power of regulations in the first place, and now that he had used such a powerful move, the power of regulations in his body was close to empty, and his battle prowess would definitely be greatly reduced. More importantly, how was Ling Han able to withstand such a blow from him? Furthermore, was his body a bottomless pit that could actually lock so many regulations? It's my turn, Ling Han said word by word. He took a step, and his figure instantly sped up, appearing in front of Xin Chao in an instant, and throwing out a fierce punch. Humph! Xin Chao was not afraid. Even if his battle prowess had fallen greatly, he was still above Ling Han. Previously, Ling Han was able to contend with him not because the latter was strong, but because he had been constantly dodging. Now that he was facing him head-on, wasn't that seeking death? Did he think that his regulations were about to be exhausted, and he could turn defeat into victory? Childish. The two of them exchanged blows. Pung pung pung. As expected, Xin Chao was stronger. With each blow, Ling Han would spit out blood, but he only channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll and would element regulations to quickly recover from his injuries. But Xin Chao was too strong, so strong that his recovery speed could not keep up. Very soon, his skin split open, and his white bones were revealed. However, Ling Han only channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, and his body immediately recovered to its peak condition. He looked coldly at Xin Chao, only filled with a soaring fighting spirit, and not a shred of emotion. Xin Chao was really afraid this time. Did you think that he was a fuck you undying monster? Suffering such heavy injuries, and still being able to stand, and actually exude such a wild fighting spirit. If you were not a monster, then what were you? Ling Han did not speak. He attacked again, his fists explosively shooting out as he used the Furious Fist. This time, he was really enraged to the point of madness, and completely entered into the concept of the fist technique. His fists spread out, and the sky was filled with the afterimages of his fists. Fight, 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 fight. He wanted to fight to shatter the sky, fight to destroy the earth, and fight to his heart's content. Chapter 2233. Xin Chao couldn't take it anymore. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Although he had struck back forcefully, it was short-lived. The rules in his body had been exhausted, and his combat strength had hit rock bottom. Now, putting aside Ling Han, even a casual severing mundane tear would be able to suppress Xin Chao with a flip of his hand. Bam! Ling Han punched Xin Chao in the face, causing his nose to bleed. However, Ling Han had obviously controlled his strength. Otherwise, this punch would not just be a matter of blood, but his entire head would have exploded. He was not Ling Han, who had a strong physique. Aren't you very arrogant? Ling Han threw another punch. Be arrogant again. As he spoke, he punched Xin Chao's face. Xin Chao's face immediately swelled up into a pig's head. Did I offend you? No. But you just had to provoke me. Fuck, are you stupid? I only have one way to deal with sluts, and that is to beat them up. Ling Han continued to throw punches, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard from Xin Chao's body. Xin Chao's bones were broken by Ling Han's punches, and some were even smashed into pieces. Ah! Xin Chao could only scream. Who said that emperors couldn't scream when they were beaten? The natives were furious. They took out their weapons and aimed them at Ling Han. Release him, they said coldly. However, the strongest among them was only a fourth secret emperor. After all, how could there be so many emperors? Even on this bloody battlefield, there weren't many emperors. Ling Han held onto Xin Chao's chest with one hand as he swept his gaze across the crowd. He did not wipe off the fresh blood on his face. His cold gaze swept across the crowd, causing a chill to rise from the bottom of everyone's heart, causing them to retreat repeatedly. This infuriated the natives. They were people who dared to rush up and fight the foreign races. Since young, they had seen their fair share of foreign races sieging cities, and every single time, there was a sea of corpses falling from the Heavens Pass fortress. Even this was not enough to make them tremble in fear. Yet they retreated under a single glance from Ling Han. How could they endure this? Go! They took another step forward, swarming forward and surrounding Ling Han. Ling Han sneered. Using Xin Chao as a weapon, he danced and swept towards the crowd. Everyone instantly held back for fear of harming the innocent, and didn't dare to launch a fierce attack at all. You are too despicable. Not a man. The natives all shouted. Each and every one of them flew into a rage. They even wanted to provoke Ling Han into putting Xin Chao down, so that they could fight to the death. Why would Ling Han care? He just waved Xin Chao around to attack. Furthermore, his battle prowess far surpassed that of the others. Apart from the Four Secrets Emperor, who else could withstand 3 punches and 2 kicks from him? Pung pung pung. One figure after another danced in the air, and all of them were sent flying by Ling Han's kicks, and smashed into the ground. In the end, only the Four Secrets Emperor was left. They were bound by Ling Han's regulations of time, and the flow of time slowed down by over 10,000 times. They could only watch helplessly as Ling Han waved Xin Chao and smashed them over. Pa! The 2 of them were instantly battered and bleeding, and they fell into a heap. Mei Hua, Lu Jun, and the other disciples of the academy all looked at Ling Han with gazes of extreme worship. This was too amazing, and they were completely stunned. He was only a first secret, but he could even defeat a 5 Secrets Emperor. He was indescribably strong. They were even more unable to understand why Ling Han's power seemed to be inexhaustible, and why he couldn't receive any replenishment from regulations here. Even a 5 Secrets Emperor had been defeated. Then in this world, was there anyone who could be a match for Ling Han? After a long while, everyone finally woke up one by one. They lay on the ground moaning incessantly. Xin Chao had also woken up. He didn't make a sound, but he would occasionally glance at Ling Han when he wasn't paying attention. His face was filled with confusion. In terms of true battle prowess, he could definitely crush Ling Han, but the regulations Ling Han could use were endless, and he had actually exhausted himself to defeat him. Of course, if it wasn't for Ling Han's exquisite movement skills, his proficiency in the regulations of time, and his astonishing recovery ability, he wouldn't have been able to last for so long. But when all these were added together, it allowed Ling Han to complete a miracle. He had defeated a 5 Secrets Emperor with his first secret cultivation. The Emperor Star was indeed amazing, but if it was only a first secret, it would at most be comparable to a 3rd Secret Emperor. It was impossible for it to contend against a 5 Secrets Emperor. This young man was simply too monstrous. Ling Han coughed and said, "Since you're all awake, let's go back." Everyone was silent. Bullying the few with numbers, and bullying the weak, was a crushing defeat. These natives had also become defeated roosters, and they no longer had the slightest bit of arrogance. Lu Jun and the other 3 were extremely excited. After entering the 17th camp, they had been looked down upon by the natives, and had even suffered some hardship. Now that Ling Han had displayed his prowess, and suppressed the natives to the point where they didn't even have the slightest bit of temper, they were naturally able to vent their anger. With Ling Han in the lead, everyone set out, heading towards the Heavens Pass. After a long while, they finally walked out of the neutral zone. At this time, Niehashan and the other 19 teams were already waiting there. Everyone's heads were drooping, as if they had received a serious blow. The others all asked, thinking that they had encountered an attack from a super powerful monster. "Han Lin, I'm going to beat you up." Xin Chao's whole body trembled, and the light of regulation shone again. He had become powerful again. This was already the territory of the celestial realm, and he could also circulate the power of regulation. So he had completely recovered to his strongest state. Ling Han completely ignored him, and directly walked towards Niehashan. "You're courting death." Xin Chao roared in fury, and hurriedly chased after Ling Han, shooting out a punch. Wang! His movements suddenly stopped, as if his body had been completely controlled by an invisible power. Niehashan showed a hint of displeasure, and said, "You are the captain, and also a 5 Secrets Emperor. Are you allowed to bully your teammates?" It was he who had made a move to control Xin Chao. As an ascending origin tier elite, it was naturally effortless for him to make a move. Xin Chao's face was filled with indignation, and thus he was scowling angrily at Niehashan. He was a 5 Secrets Emperor, and once he stepped into the ascending origin tier, his battle prowess would not be weaker than Niehashan's. Thus, he was not very respectful towards Niehashan. It would not be long before he would be able to advance into this level, and be on equal footing with Nyehashan, or even suppress him. Still not backing down. Nyehashan humphed softly, his single eye exuding endless coldness. Shen Chao's face paled, and he involuntarily retreated. There was a natural chasm between the immortal palace tier and the ascending origin tier. Without forming 11 mystery tiers, how could he possibly be a match? Meanwhile, Ling Han said, Lord Nye, I've discovered something amiss in the mountain valley. He told her about the situation he had encountered, including the flash of his eyes. When they heard his words, a considerable number of people snickered. What kind of joke was this? How could there possibly be an ascending origin tier-level existence in the neutral zone? It should be known that even ninth heaven celestial kings could not possibly enter, as they would be forcibly crushed by the might of heaven and earth. Could an ascending origin tier compare to a ninth heaven celestial king? Thus, when Nyehashan heard this, he only nodded very casually and said, I will investigate further. However, he had absolutely no intention of delving into this matter. One could tell from his expression. He waved his hand and had everyone return to the camp. Ling Han still wanted to say something, but Nyehashan did not have any intention of paying any more attention to him, so he could only give up on this thought. After returning to the camp, Ling Han began to study the celestial medicine he had obtained, as well as that living being. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.